It's on there, Mary.
Okay, sounds like we're good.
Okay.
It's on there, Mary.
All right, let's call the meeting to order. It is 9:03, and today we're going to start out with a moment of silence to recognize two of our staff members that have passed away recently. So, Kara, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to speak to on that, or?
Yes, thank you, President Lindner. This is something that we know that our team is aware of, but we wanted to publicly acknowledge that in the recent month or so, we have lost two park board members. One individual was named Vincent Normand, who served in admissions at Crone Conservatory. And the second gentleman was Kenneth Casey, who served as a district crew leader in our West District. Both were longtime employees and beloved by staff. So I would like to ask for a moment of silence in honor of those individuals that we have lost. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. It's a tragic situation. Okay, moving on. We need to have a roll call to see who's here to start the meeting. So, Mary.
Thank you. President Lindner.
I'm here.
Vice President Getz.
Here.
Commissioner Castellini.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Commissioner North.
Here.
Thank you.
How does that sound, Molly?
It's very exciting. The highest honor I've yet been bestowed.
All right. Well, we're thrilled to have you, and we'll give you a little bit more recognition and acknowledgement shortly. But prior to that, we need to have an approval of the December 17th meeting minutes. So are there any changes or adjustments that need to be recognized? Okay, so hearing none, can we have a motion to approve them as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Okay, we need to roll call vote this.
President Lindner.
Yes.
Vice President Getz.
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini.
Yes. Commissioner
Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. As stated just briefly earlier, a couple of recognitions that we want to go through here. And I'm not sure how we want to play this out, but first on the agenda is Commissioner or ex-Commissioner Kevin Flynn. Quite bittersweet, Kevin. I will just say that it's been a real honor and pleasure to work with you. You have, been a tremendous contributor to our mission. You have given us the inside scoop and track and better understanding of how the city operates, or as you say, sometimes doesn't operate. And I just really want to thank you for your service and with respect to the park board. And I wish you all the best in your future service, which I trust will be coming around here fairly shortly to the city. I know you certainly you have my support. Unfortunately, I don't live in the city, so I can't vote for you, but I will absolutely support you. So thank you, for all you've done. You've been a real pleasure to work with, and I will then just pass it on. I'm sure, this is going to be echoed by every other commissioner out here. So I will just, Jim, you want to go next since you're second in command?
Sure, and as usual, I will be brief. Kevin, I just want to thank you as well. We've known the value that you brought to City Council, and you have definitely, in the short period of time you've been on the park board, have really brought that same energy and proactive approach and expertise to the board. So we won't say goodbye. We will say thank you. And we look forward to continued working with you in a different relationship. But I know you will always have parks closely to your heart and mind. So thank you, Kevin.
Well, thanks everyone. I love parks. I think parks really is one of the real gems in the crown of the Queen City. It's been an honor to be on the park board. As I think some of you know, I was appointed by the mayor to fill in for an unfinished term, and I've been on a month-to-month basis for the last year and a half, I think, since then. So I told the mayor he needed to find somebody good to replace me, and he found Molly, and I've known Molly for years, and she will be tremendous on the park board and a great addition. And I'm only a phone call away, so whenever anything is needed relative to parks, I will be there.
Thank you. Any other parting shots, comments of adulation for our esteemed friend here?
Susie Castellini, I just want to thank you for all that you have taught me personally regarding how the city operates. It has really been helpful.
Thank you.
And Mr. President, to
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Flynn, it's been a true pleasure. I have enjoyed sitting next to you at the meetings when we were meeting in person. I too really appreciate your perspective and your knowledge of city operations that have helped us in our park operations so much. I thank you, and I wish you all the best in your new endeavors.
Thank you all very much.
And
All right.
President Linder, I will
Yes,
just
go ahead.
by thanking Commissioner Flynn personally, as well as on behalf of the park staff. Kevin, thank you very much for all of your guidance and care as I've transitioned into this role, and we are forever grateful.
And that is true. I mean, even though it's only been a brief time, I've been through what, 3 different park commissioner.
We wondered why you were being retired, Kevin. So thank you.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't seem that brief though, does it?
Mm-hmm.
So shifting gears to our new commissioner here. Molly, somebody must have got you at a weak moment or something, huh?
Well, I will give a little insight on that, Brad, which is that the mayor has asked me on a couple of occasions to fill an appointed seat on this board or that. I've declined him repeatedly, and he had mentioned when I had seen him just a month or so ago that he was going to talk to someone about filling Kevin's departure on the Parks Board. And I'm like, well, I mean, why are you going to ask him? What about me? And he was very surprised that I had some willingness to fill one of these appointed seats. But I'm absolutely thrilled. We spend practically all of our free time that we spend in Cincinnati in the parks in some way. We've been hiking with our kids since we could strap them to our bodies, and now they brag that they're very good hikers. And we've just watched as the trails have become appointed with markers, and they really have the parks have created such a place within all the various woods throughout the Cincinnati parks, and we just love them. So I'm excited to see more of that to come. And I would also say that this role has added great esteem to my profile, not only because I'm now a parks commissioner, but because I can say that I've filled Kevin Flynn's seat. And it's met with great surprise that I could actually fill it. So I'll do my best, Kevin. You've been such a great leader in the city, you take a real common sense yet fierce approach. And I know that you'll continue to lead in what you take on next. And I'll be there to support you. So.
Thank you, Molly. For those 12 viewers that are watching on Parks TV, I just give you a little bit of Molly's background. So I'm going to kind of read from her bio here. So Molly North is a driven executive who some might say is obsessed with getting things done. Since 2015, North has served as president and CEO of Al Nair, a commercial real estate developer and design builder headquartered in Cincinnati. She is heavily invested in the company culture, which fuels its growth trajectory. North has extensive experience in sophisticated capital instruments and is especially passionate about projects that foster diversity and inclusion at every level. North is also heavily engaged in the community, serving as the immediate past chair of the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber and on the boards or is an active member of Artworks, Hamilton County Land Reutilization Corporation, Ready Cincinnati, Cincinnati Regional Business Committee, Young Presidents Organization, and the Cincinnati Women's Executive Forum. North has received recognitions including Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year 2019, Midwest Real Estate News Magazine Commercial Real Estate Hall of Fame, and Cincinnati Business Courier Women Who Mean Business Award. YWCA Career Women of Achievement as well. She is also a member of Cincinnati Leadership Class 39. Molly takes every opportunity to get outdoors with her partner Ben and their 2 children to promote one of their family's core values, which we just heard of, as well as caring for our environment. An avid hiker and hobby naturalist, Molly enjoys the many beautiful trails offered throughout the city parks and is thrilled to serve the city of Cincinnati as Parks Commissioner. So with that, welcome, Molly. We look forward to working with you. I know you've got some large shoes to fill, but I trust you will fill them well. So again, welcome. So with that, we'll move on to the police report, something we've been missing for a while, and I'm thrilled to have a return to the agenda. So Kara, do you want to present the lead off into this?
Sure. Thank you, President Lindner. So as you've just stated, this is something that has been missing from the Park Board agenda for a very long time. And through reaching out to Chief Isaac, I believe we have with us today Captain Swingley. And I'm thrilled. This is kind of a first shot at this. So certainly as we go through this sort of presentation or communications with Captain Swingley, would be open to feedback on whether or not this is satisfying the needs of the commissioners. So with that, I would like to introduce Captain Swingley. And Captain Swingley, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My name is Captain Dennis Swingley, and I just transferred from our criminal investigation section to our special services section, which includes canines, our traffic unit, gang unit, and a bunch of others. So I'm glad to be here. So I recently met with our crime analyst who compiled the stats for the parks. So they tell me that these stats include a 50-foot radius around the parks. So the arrest might be made right next to the park, but it's within sight of the park. So it affects the parks. So with that, in the fourth quarter, calls for service was 2,118 calls for service to the parks and the surrounding area of the parks. Of those calls for service that police responded, 274 arrests were made last quarter. For example, the Vice Unit arrested 21 men for sex crimes at the parks since October. You might have seen this on Channel 19. Mount Airy Forest is one of the places they target. The top 3 types of charges in the parks are possession of drug paraphernalia, assaults with victims harmed, and drug abuse and possession. So that's about all I have. Is there any questions?
I know, I appreciate that update. If we could, going forward, help us put that in perspective. Now that we have 1/4 of information, we'll be able to do that. But it will be helpful moving forward if this is par for the course, or if there is a noticed uptick of a certain type of crime or in a certain park. So I appreciate that going forward.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Guest. I was about to make the same request. And the other one and I don't know what would be the right comparison, but if there is some appropriate comparison to some other area of the city that we could say we are in line or out of line with what's happening in the rest of the city, that would be helpful perspective if there's any reasonable comparison.
Yes, ma'am. I'll make a note of that.
And the thing that I might add would be, are there some specific parks that are really hot spots that have, a significant more level of nefarious activities versus other parks?
Yes, I can get that information to you.
Thank you. Any other suggestions or questions for the captain? Captain, thank you. We're thrilled to have you join our motley crew here once a quarter. So look forward to the next time, and hopefully we'll have some good perspective and hopefully a downswing on some of the activities.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your feedback, and I'll have a more thorough report for you next time.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Captain.
Okay.
Brad,
Yeah.
I think we need to go back and approve minutes. We might have missed that on the agenda there.
No, I think didn't we approve that?
Yeah, that was taken care of.
I think you seconded, Jim.
I'll have another cup of coffee.
Is that Kentucky coffee?
Maybe that's my problem.
Trust me, I will miss something, in this meeting. I always do, right? It wouldn't be an official meeting without me screwing up somewhere. Okay. Moving on to new business. Kara's going to talk to us about the annual management priority plan.
Yes, thank you very much, President Lindner. Commissioners, I'd like to start this agenda item by backtracking about 6 months to July of 2020. I had, at that moment, I had owed you an annual plan charting the path forward for fiscal year 21 for the park board. And at that time, I had approached you with a request to basically place on hold for 6 months conversations about advancements forward. And that request for that 6-month reprieve came from a desire to focus on our COVID response. It came from a desire to focus and a need to focus on the impacts of the early retirement program that was implemented by the city, and the impacts of the restructuring of our organization due to that ERIP process. I would like to thank you for your support at that moment, because it really did truly allow for us to have a singular focus on those items, which I believe we navigated to the greatest service for our community. I believe that the team navigated it with grace and vigor, and it's because of your generosity that we were given that space to focus on those items. And with that being said, at that time, I had proposed coming to you with will probably be a once in a lifetime, once in a career half-year annual management plan, and that is what I am presenting to you today. This is a management priority plan for January 1, which I do recognize that we're already a couple weeks into January, through the end of our fiscal year of June 30th. The document that I presented to you today was as a result of in-depth conversations with each division manager regarding how we were going to begin, or I should say continue, the transformation of Cincinnati parks to be able to better offer and better serve our community through this public good that we are responsible for. So the document itself does then call out goals and objectives for each division manager. These will be goals and objectives that are placed on each division manager's annual performance plan, by which they will be evaluated annually. And I'd also like to make a couple comments about the document itself. This is the format that we have prepared for you for these 6 months. What I am hopeful with is with the strength of our board and continuing to work together is to transform this document potentially into something a little different for fiscal year 22. But for this moment, this is the nitty gritty. This is those final, or the start of that transformational process within our organization. I could not be more proud of the efforts of our senior leadership team, who worked with me diligently to identify these what are a large amount of goals for the first 6 months of calendar year 21. To that effect, the document that was included in your park board packet does not list the goals for me personally serving in the role of director. That is something that I will engage with you in today. During our meeting or during executive session, so that we can collaboratively determine what those goals are for the next 6 months. But at this time, I'd like to turn it over to you for any questions or comments or concerns. We certainly have a couple of paths forward. If there are minor requests to be made, changes to be made, then perhaps that's something that can be approved today. If the commissioners would like to see some major changes, we can absolutely take that back and bring this back to you in February. I would like to engage in the fiscal year 22 conversation prior to July, so that we can bring that to you and not be a couple of months into the fiscal year before our annual plan is produced. So with that, we are certainly all ears, and thank you for your time for allowing me to present that.
Okay, thanks, Kara. I'll just open it up to anybody that has questions or comments regarding these objectives for the next 6 months.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Jim, go ahead.
I would just say that this is really a significant move forward. I really like the approach of planning for the year. I appreciate the establishing of goals and objectives. As you recall in my last meeting, I'm about accountability. So I like the approach that you're taking here of establishing priorities and goals and objectives so that we can, make sure that as we as a board just look at how are we doing on a monthly or quarterly, however you want to report back to us. The one thing that I would say as I look through this is there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of specific targets missing that I think I would like to see going forward. I appreciate the one true target that I see in the natural resources where we've put a number, quantified the goal or the target with adding more trees. As we talked about, everybody likes to plant more trees. But I would caution that there does seem to be a lot of what I might call bureaucracy or academiology that's being applied here with, for example, with the operations. I love seeing that we are reestablishing a safety committee. I think safety, especially in the work that we do as parks, has to be at the top of our conversation all the time. So I'm glad to see that we've reestablished something that I thought was going on. But then later in here, I see a lot more of establishing more committees, establishing a minimum of 5 land management committees. I see a lot of targets as far as documents that we want to prepare or studies we want to do. I would like to see specific dates on these when we want to see those accomplished. The only other specific comment I would have would be, I see we've moved under the market communications area, this concept of a park improvement community request program that you had brought up at a prior meeting. And I think we all said that in reading through that policy and program really smacked at a lot of bureaucracy that we were trying to ask community members to go through when suggesting a project. I think there was maybe 5 different review processes that you had implemented to make a project that was requested, what it had to go through to even get consideration. So if you want to continue and desire to continue with that process, I would just say that I would request as a park board that we see on a monthly basis what are the inbounds, what has been requested of the community, so that we as a board can understand what has come in, so that we can help prioritize through this 5-stage, I think it was, review process, so that we could see it and have a monthly report of the status of those, so we don't get bogged down in park board bureaucracy. But besides that, again, I think I like the approach. I think it's great. I would just stress the ability for us to evaluate and hold accountable. How did we do in achieving those goals? But again, I think it's great.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, go ahead, Linda.
Thank you. Kara, I think this is really good. It was very helpful to me because what it helped me do is understand better what you see as the expectations of each of the departments, and to write it down and make it clear. That's very, very helpful to me, because in all the time that I've been here, I still get responsibilities confused. So I appreciate that. The thing that I was looking for as I read through it in each of them was, yes, I understand sort of the task or the goals, if you will, but I didn't understand completely the so that, because I'm looking at this as what is the difference that's going to be a result of our having done that, and how does that match with our overall goal? And so what I'm thinking about is, as we look at the year, what is our overall objective for the year? What do we want to accomplish? What is the difference we want to be able to see at the end of the year? And here are how we're going to make that, here's how we're going to make that happen. So that's what I was looking at with these things. These are things that we're going to do. Here's the difference it's going to make, and here's how we're going to know we made that difference. So the measures that go along with that as well, because all of this looks pretty aggressive to me, and especially when I look at the time frame on it. So to help us at the end, when we're looking back and saying how well did we do, we created the right expectations going in. So that additional perspective would be helpful to me. The other thing, and I went back to make sure I wasn't missing it, but all of this is about activities and goals and what we expect to get done, but people get those things done. So is there a part of this that addresses our people and what the goals are for people, who they are, and any of that, or is this not, is that captured somewhere else?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to respond to any of the questions that come in. I guess Commissioner Thomas, since you're speaking at this moment, I'll address some of those. The goals for people are ultimately the responsibility of each division manager. So each division manager has staff that work within their organizations. As we were compiling these goals, they were in very close communication with their staff as well, so that it wasn't, none of these goals were created blindly. These were goals that were made understanding what our current resources were, staffing being one of those resources. And so without, as you have identified, this document doesn't call out which staff members underneath each division are addressing which goal, because in a lot of scenarios there may be one, there may be five, so from my perspective, that was by listing the goal underneath the division, it is now the division manager's responsibility to ensure that they're delegating their team appropriately.
Yeah, that was not my question. Let me say it differently. My question is about people and their development. And it's not so much about who's responsible for what, but in order to get these done, we've got to be growing our people. And that is an important piece to me. So my question is that captured somewhere else in terms of what are we doing? How are we focusing on developing our people so that they are equipped to deliver against these objectives that we've laid out here?
Yes, ma'am. You have identified something that is near and dear to my heart, which is professional development of a team throughout our organization, not just for senior leadership, but for every single person within our organization. That is a role and responsibility that I have covered underneath the director's office.
Okay.
What we have in the document here is just a listing of that. However, that would be something that myself, Ms. Unterreiner, and Ms. Cole would work on collaboratively, and I would also work on with the division managers. And I have presented that as a draft goal for myself to establish a professional development structure for our organization.
Okay.
From the determination of the types of professional development opportunities to budgetary dollars associated with those investments. Obviously, a national conference is going to be less or it's going to be more costly than an internal program to advance our staff. And one thing that I'm most excited about when we talk about extending professional development opportunities throughout our organization is the reestablishment of a program in the past that was called the Parks Academy, the Parks Leadership Academy.
Yeah.
That was an internal structure that was designed for park staff to help other park staff develop their skill sets.
Sure.
So yes, I have, my intention is to capture that under the director and to, over the next 6 months, put in that framework so that we can continue to grow our organization because we want every single individual within our staff to be able to progress throughout this organization. And that is something that we have seen with this transformation of and transition of our organization. Every single promotion that we've done has been an internal promotion. So we've got a good start of preparing our employees, but we certainly want to maintain that focus. I apologize, I answered incorrectly, or I didn't quite get to your answer the first time. Hopefully that.
Yes, thank you.
I just have a couple of additional comments. I'll try not to repeat things that others have said. And of course, I recognize I'm brand new to this, so in some cases I may not know what I'm talking about, but I'll try. Number one, I would say this is really great from the perspective of, you're planning your work, you're working your plan, this is how you get things done. And I agree, this is a good format for holding the organization accountable. It does strike me as a lot to chew off in a very short period of time, 6 months. So I would challenge, to create some simplicity around some primary goals that you actually want to complete and get done. In here, there's a lot of start, implement, sort of like a get started and make progress on, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of commitment to an end date of completing. And I think the best goals are ones that you can say, was this achieved, yes or no? And it doesn't require a qualification or further description on whether you did or didn't. So think about how you can create an end date on that June 30th date. And then I would say, you know, a lot of these feel a little bit more like strategies where the goal or the objective of what we're trying to accomplish feels unclear to me. And this is almost a benefit of me being a newbie. So when I see develop and implement a diverse marketing strategy, I like the way that sounds, but it's a strategy to achieve something. I'm not sure exactly what it is we're trying to achieve. I think that gets back to Linda's comments about kind of what's our current state and what's our future state. What is it actually that we're trying to accomplish here? So I challenge us to start looking at things through that lens. And then finally, well, not finally, two more comments. One is, I like the idea just culturally and philosophically of moving planning and design to the top of this agenda, because I want us to have the perspective of our primary goal is to maintain and improve our beautiful parks. And we've got this at the end of our agenda. It's almost like it's something that's going to happen in the background, but that's what we're here to do. We have to build infrastructure in order to actually accomplish that. But what we're here to do is beautify these public spaces. This is my estimation of what we're here to do anyway. And then last, I would say, I would like to at some point talk with the board about establishing a framework to set more of a midterm plan for the parks. I think 10 years is too long, even 5 years is too long. But if we could wrap ourselves around a 3-year plan of what we would seek to accomplish, it can help us back into what we want to accomplish in 1 year. And it really can provide a guide for us. So we can take that up at some later point.
Thank you.
Thank you. All excellent comments. As I used to say in high school, yeah, I was going to say that.
President,
So, yeah, go ahead, please.
may I just take a moment to respond to some of the questions?
Yeah, please do.
Concerns that were raised. Thank you all for your input. As I stated, and I do have a commitment to creating a better document the next time we go around. I'll just take a moment to address some of the questions that you had brought up so that you can understand where my thought process was. And I think, you know, some of those played out, some of those thought processes aligned with the comments you're saying, and some of them missed the mark. I first will address the timeline, and to your question, Commissioner North, about what does implement mean, or from the perspective of myself and the division managers, when we created that, implement meant it was done and in place. While a lot of these goals, almost none of these goals say complete by date, inherently all goals were associated with the June 30th deadline. So if there was a goal or something that referenced reestablishing or creating, then the goal is that creation would be done by June 30th. If it said create and implement, the expectation is that on June 30th, we are ready to go with these things in place and or have completed the project. So I can absolutely understand the request for more clarity on goal dates. I think from my perspective, and again, I understand that there's a gap there, but for me, that was the metric that was built in. So obviously an opportunity for improvement with our fiscal year 22 task or plan. Commissioner Getz, just to some of the questions that you raised, specifically about bureaucracy and creating additional, I guess from my perspective and through the conversations that I've had with the division managers, is that anything that we've contemplated was to and have set out to achieve was specifically to ultimately reduce the amount of ambiguity or lack of clarity. And so putting those processes in place, the land management committees are to me, they're going to be vital. These are committees that are going to be made up a cross section of individuals from our team who are going to have a singular focus of defining a best practice for our land management practices. So prairie management, we're going to get our team of experts together and say, how is it that we develop prairies? Lake management, hillside management, those kind of things. And to the point on the community request, again, the goal is not to create more barriers or more bureaucracy, but rather to streamline and clarify processes for both our team as well as the external community. So I absolutely identify with the way that this plan has been written, that it seems like there's a lot of creation. The only comment that I will make to that is that and anything that involves additional creation or committees was thought through as a way to simplify and or clarify the processes that we engage with on a daily basis, where maybe there is currently ambiguity or lack of clarity. So yeah, I will just again say that I do appreciate, I'm trying to see if there's anything else. I do appreciate all of the comments. I think that I appreciate the support that you have communicated. As for this being a big thing to chew off, I will answer that, yes, it is. Here's why I feel confident about it, and here's why I feel comfortable presenting this to you, being that this is a tremendous leap forward. We have one of the best leadership teams here. All of them are represented on this call today. And these are leaders who are incredibly competent and prepared to transform their specific organizations. We were very thoughtful when we created these goals about the capacity of their team. And so while I will absolutely agree, this is an incredible amount of stuff to take on, it's been a long time since we've really dug in and done something transformative, because we have almost lost an entire year to just a response effort. So yes, I will wholeheartedly agree with everyone that this is a lot, and we were thoughtful, and I do believe that each of our division managers will be successful in achieving all of these goals, as we were very thoughtful in putting them together. So I don't know if that helped at all, but I do look forward to the creation of the FY22 annual document, incorporating a lot of the comments and areas of improvement that you've identified.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Jim.
I'd like to pick up on a couple things Commissioner North said, because I think they're important. I understand and I fully agree that we have to get processes in place and expectations for performance in place. But at the end of the day, we also need to get the work done. So I think as an example of what I was talking about on specific dates or goals or specific achievable goals, under the planning and design, which I do think is our key area of what I know this board has said since I've been on the board, is that we need to do a better job on getting things done. I don't see anywhere in here any metric or goal about achieving the targets that have been established. And I would refer to the document that's in the packet today at the very end with the capital projects. And once again, this quarter, all the target dates have been moved forward by another quarter. So I think to put what strategically this board is looking for into the goals and objectives that we're setting, I think a key one would be under planning and design, that we hit the targets that we have been given today that were established at the beginning of the year. And that way we can quantify, as you're saying, all of the groups don't think that some of these processes will impede our ability or add additional bureaucracy, but help streamline the process. If we hit the targets, that will say, yeah, we're doing what we wanted to do and it's working. But if we don't hit the targets, then it says that for some reason we're still not there. So I would add a specific goal and objective of hitting the targets that have been established for all the projects. And then to Commissioner North's comments about strategy, I strongly feel that the role of the board is to establish the strategic and working with you as a director, but establish what is the strategy? Where are we going from the big picture to help you in achieving the objectives that the board is laying out? So when I see comments in here about design a rebranding campaign, that's pretty strategic if we're saying we're going to rebrand Cincinnati Park. So I just want to add that we need to be very mindful that strategy is the board's responsibility, working with you as our director, but be sure that we put in upfront that the board is brought along, or the board is a key component of establishing that rebranding or marketing strategy or some of the other ones that you have here. But again, it's a big move forward, and perhaps you can come back with some more specific targets for us to look at for these final documents.
Thanks, Jim. I think, again, good comments. And I think, you know, getting more stuff done is I think the important point behind all this. So as well as being able to measure our progress. It sounds to me like there might be a little bit more work before we can approve this as it sits today. So I think in general, everybody seems to agree with the aggressive and challenging list of goals, but maybe to come back with a little bit more refinement as it relates to metrics and timing, so that there is an opportunity for us to get some clarity and follow along this process, and really not just wait to the end of the year to find out whether we won or we lost. And any other? I am clearly open to other comments, you know, for her marching orders.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Linda.
I agree in general with the comments that have been made, but the thing that I'm struggling with right now is, I think, Kara, you opened your comments talking about the impact of COVID on everything last year. And so the thing that I'm asking myself is, as we start this year, COVID is still here. We're still having to deal with that. What is realistic for us to focus on and prioritize so that we can accomplish in the 6 months that we have left in this fiscal year? Do we want to take on any of the create committees, establish this group and all of that. While that's good, and if it's something that could be done also, are there other priorities? Are there important things that are on the list of things to get done that we've not been able to do because of the circumstances we've been living in? And is there a way to pick out some of those priorities, focus on getting those done, and then work on some of the structural enhancements as time permits? So it's just thinking about how we want to use the next 6 months, given all that we've been through, all that's on the plate, and all that we want to accomplish. Just taking another look at what is realistic and what do we consider to be the priorities.
Sure. Comments, Commissioner Thomas. I think with the board's request to take, which I am absolutely supportive, for us to take this back and bring this back to you in February, that will allow us to dive into those conversations and me to dive into those conversations with the division managers. And we will absolutely, per your request, take a deep look at those. The only comment that I will make at this moment was that that conversation was definitely a part of our conversations. Many of these items are the items that were slated to be done 12 months ago that have been put off. And so almost all of these bullet points kind of fall into where we were a year ago and intending to be a year ago. And so these were the things that were taking place. To your comments about that we are still in this, I absolutely agree. And we will, I guess, look internally and just say, is this too much? At the moment, we felt confident that we were going to be able to achieve these things, that although the COVID response was still occurring, that those processes, the things that we were spending 24 hours a day on, literally, those have all been ironed out with the city and those processes have been put into place. And so we are following measures that have already been thought out as it comes to our COVID response. But I will absolutely take to heart everything that you just said. And as we review this with our team over the next month, determine if we're taking one step too far. And I do appreciate that comment.
Okay, any other comments regarding the management priority plan? I think some really good comments by everybody. So I think what we'll have at the end of February is hopefully something that we can all sign off on and move forward. And I would agree that the level of work with responding to COVID today, hopefully, is a heck of a lot less than what you guys were going through in March and April. So I mean, you guys had to figure out what the heck to do. You've done that. You've done a really good job at that. Now it's executing upon that. So I think you've created a little bit of breathing room and some headspace for you to do some additional work. And the fact that you guys have been kind of contemplating these projects and priorities for the past year, I gotta believe gives you some advanced or whether it's been unconscious or conscious, you guys have made progress, whether you've just been thinking about it or actually starting to implement some of these things. So again, it is aggressive, but I like aggressive. So better to stretch yourself and be aspirational, I feel. So with that, why don't we move on to the designated outdoor refreshment area on the agenda?
Yeah, so thank you. As you know, the city is pursuing a designated outdoor refreshment area, or DORA, for the area that surrounds the banks. DORA will allow the the licensed liquor permit holders to sell alcoholic beverages in a plastic container. And then the patrons would be permitted to leave an establishment with that drink to enjoy within the DORA boundaries. Today, I do have Chief of Staff Billy Weber on the call here to provide a short presentation, and then we certainly can take any questions that you may have at the end of this. So Billy, would you like to start your presentation?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jenny. And thank you, commissioners, for having me. I'm going to share my screen here to get PowerPoint up. Can you see that?
Yep.
Great. So as Jenny said, my name is Billy Weber. I'm Chief of Staff in the City Manager's Office, and thanks for having me. I'm presenting today, as Jenny said, on an ordinance that's before council to establish a DORA, a designated outdoor refreshment area, and then a related proposal that is to create a pedestrian plaza on a portion of East Freedom Way down at the banks. So just to explain, a DORA is a creature of state law. In a city of our size, council can create up to 4 of these areas. This would be the first one passed in the city of Cincinnati, but there have been several established in other cities, including in the city of Toledo and more locally in the city of Hamilton here. And as Jenny indicated, basically how it works is if passed by council, any licensed liquor permit holder within the DORA area are then permitted to sell alcoholic drinks in designated plastic containers. Patrons are then permitted to leave that establishment with their drink and enjoy it outside within the DORA boundaries. The proposed boundaries are in the map at the bottom of the slide there, and it's shaded in pink. It incorporates the bank's communities, the large stadiums, the Heritage Bank Center, and then obviously portions of Smale Riverfront Park. And the boundaries, just for clarity, are on the north and south side at least, are the south side of 2nd Street and then the north side of Marion Way. There will be signage posted, more traditional signage posted around the boundaries, and then additionally, there will be what are known as street tattoos, which is actually a signage that is affixed to the sidewalk to clearly designate where the boundaries are. In addition to the boundary signage, there will be signage posted throughout describing the rules of operation of the DORA. From an hours operation standpoint, the proposal is for it to be open all year, starting at 11 a.m. to 1 a.m., but with the last drink served at midnight to allow for a wind down, a natural wind down of operations. To be clear, there is no outside alcohol allowed. You cannot bring your own alcohol to this. It is only alcoholic drinks that are purchased from proper vendors within the area that can then be, you can use to walk around with. There is also an opt-in, opt-out function. So businesses or property owners that are within the area can choose to participate or not to participate in the DORA. From an operational standpoint, the way this will function is the city intends to contract with the bank's community authority to provide all management and operation services, including any additional needed services in excess of currently provided city police and sanitation services. In case you're not familiar with the bank's community authority, it is a quasi-governmental entity that was created by council, and it's run by a board of both public and private stakeholders. The bank's community authority generates revenue by an assessment on food and beverage purchases made at the banks. And then with the addition of the DORA here, they will have additional revenue opportunities by finding sponsorships, and also through the sale of the plastic cups to vendors, they'll be able to generate revenue to make this financially self-supporting operation. So there will not be, from the city side, additional public services needed. From a public safety perspective, the city, through that management contract, the bank's community authority will be providing additional needed security services. And this will be operate similarly to any special event detail. These will be off-duty CPD officers that are hired, and these officers will then supplement any regular staffing that the city has for police downtown in general, including the banks. And to be clear, there's also a substation that the police staff on a portion of East Freedom Way. So that will stay the same and is just a nice addition to the operations. From a sanitation perspective, our Department of Public Services currently does corner can runs once per day down there to pick up corner cans. They do it twice a day during large events. That will stay the same, but the Banks Community Authority will then be adding additional staffing as needed to monitor and clean the DORA area. They have a similar functionality already in place down there through a shared services agreement with the businesses. And so it will operate similarly and scale up as necessary to keep the area clean and to remove any additional garbage. And also from just a note, state law does require the use of the plastic containers for safety purposes. However, we will be working with the Banks Community Authority also on a recycling program then, both through the restaurants and bars that are down there and then through also in the public spaces as well. From a special event perspective, this will add some flexibility for having events down at the banks. And from both a security standpoint, the Banks Community Authority will, as I mentioned before, be able to handle security for those that want to throw events. And also from a liquor licensing standpoint, instead of getting a direct liquor license for a special event, this allows for those that want to throw events to operate under more of an umbrella liquor license, and allows then for those vendors of the event to serve quote unquote into the DORA. They can sell DORA drinks, and those participants of the event can then walk around the DORA area just like the patrons from the restaurants. From a community engagement standpoint, just so you all are familiar, we have talked to the Downtown Residents Council and presented to them. They are supportive. We've also been to council yesterday to the committee meeting to present, and they also, the EGZ committee approved the proposal, and so we are moving forward on the council front as well. There is a lot of community support for this, both big and small. Stakeholders down there have been engaged. That includes the food and beverage businesses, the Reds, the Bengals, the Freedom Center, MEMI, and Nichols, the largest property owner down there. And we've received letters of support from most of those parties. From a policy perspective, we have both short-term and long-term goals. The short-term goal is COVID response oriented. As we all know, the food and beverage industry and our small businesses have been really impacted by COVID-19. And so we see this absolutely as part of that response to get this up and running. Our goal is to have it up and running by the spring, targeting opening day. And we believe through, as we're not through the pandemic yet, this will absolutely help our small businesses down there and allow folks to patronize the small businesses down there and the large businesses down there in a safe way while this pandemic lasts. So in the long term, this is really about making this more of a destination. I mean, the park is a big part of the destination, at the banks. And so we really want to enhance the urban living, tourism, work and entertainment down there. And we do hope from a city perspective also that more generally, this can really help bolster the hospitality and tourism industry that we see in downtown as well. From council approval, as I mentioned, we went to committee yesterday and it passed through committee. We will be seeking full council approval in early, possibly mid-February. And then there is a state law requirement that council reviews after 5 years to adjust operational parameters as necessary. The second portion of this, the proposal or the related proposal, is to close a portion of East Freedom Way between Marion Spencer Way and Joe Nuxall Way. The basic proposal is to create a safe, attractive, vibrant pedestrian area where folks can enjoy their DORA drinks outside. And there will also be an outdoor dining component to assist those businesses both during and after COVID. From a police and safety standpoint, we are working with fire and police to make sure that their operations are not impacted, and we're incorporating those needs into the design of this area. Our goal is to be open, have these improvements completed and this be open by opening day, April 1 in this spring. So we are working rapidly to meet that goal. These are conceptual designs, just for your understanding. We are still working on final designs, but as you can see, generally the elements here, there's an outdoor dining element, there's a public space element. We are allowing for emergency access through the area, and then there are removable bollards on either side. Again, another conceptual rendering. Just from the approval timeline, I've kind of explained this, but we've been through initial public notice. We've presented the Downtown Residents Council, we've been to committee. We will be going to Planning Commission for the change in use of street, and then City Council, and we're obviously here presenting to you all to get you engaged as well. So with that, I appreciate your time and happy to answer any questions.
So the two questions I have, there's going to be a common cup. Is that my understanding? A common cup that will have to be purchased from the city. So the city's going to get, some revenue to help, call it clean up or not have any, call it economic negative impact to them. So the second question I have is, as we all know, nobody really owns beer. They just kind of rent it for a little bit. So what's the deal with bathrooms then? And I unfortunately, I'm not that familiar with the public restroom situation down there. Is this something where, if I got to go to the bathroom, I'm just going to go into somebody that is a DORA participant, or are there going to be additional facilities available for people?
So let me answer both those questions in order. The first is, yes, there will be a specific cup sold that will then it clearly, acts as a signal that this is an allowed beverage. And the way that will function is the bank's community authority will be the one kind of sourcing and then selling those cups directly. I believe it'll be directly to the vendor, and then the vendor obviously sells to the individual patrons. So that's how that will function, and correct, that will be a component of raising revenue to support operations, the security, the sanitation, all of that. From a bathroom perspective, we don't have plans to add any public facilities to the ones that are already down there, and then plus obviously the private facilities of the individual restaurants and bars that are functioning. But absolutely, we will, through the management contract, just be keeping a tight eye on any operational issues that may arise that are not accounted for through the infrastructure down there. And so that would absolutely be one on our radar.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have one question. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Molly.
Okay. Just one question, Billy. I feel that since, we are stewards of the environment and our capacity as commissioners, I have to ask, what discussion has been had about all these plastic cups?
Yeah, I mean, the recycling program, as I said, the state law kind of unfortunately ties our hands as far as use of a plastic container. It's specific under state law. They will be reusable. So if you're down there and you're getting multiple drinks, it's the same cup. And then the other component being the recycling component to try to, obviously minimize environmental impacts there. So that's been our primary focus for that.
I'll just go on record by saying that's not really good enough. So it would be valuable if, I think the city has been proactive with its plastic bag ban, et cetera, and these type of things in our communication with the state, register our desire to find a better solution so that we're not contributing to so much waste.
Absolutely. And it is something we could look into with the bank's community authority and their procurement to see if there is just drill into the exact cup that they are procuring to see if there's a more environmentally friendly option from both a recycling, maybe also a materials sourcing perspective. And I appreciate the feedback because we have heard that from elected officials as well interested. And so certainly something we can dig into deeper.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think there are biodegradable plastic cups out there. Certainly they're more expensive, but you know, I believe there is some solutions. I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead.
No, I just wanted, just for clarity, we said that the city would get the revenue, but this is going into the Banks Community Authority gets the revenue. This is not a city revenue generator, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it'll be self-contained. We'll have reporting through our management agreement, but it won't be, you know, this is not intended, it's intended as being self-supporting, not really a revenue, you know, profitable enterprise, and also not for the city as well.
So President Lindner, what I will re-clarify for the board then, the request and the recommendation to the board today is for your consideration of the inclusion of 2 park properties that would reside within this district. These properties include the Schmidlap lawn adjacent to the Moorline Lager House, as well as the future development for the Smale expansion on lot 23, which will be the outdoor music venue. So that is the significant role that the board is being asked to participate in today.
All right, any other questions for Billy? So hearing none, why don't we put this puppy to a vote? Mary?
President Lindner?
Well, wait, what is, I'm not sure what the, what's a motion?
So
Oh,
in
yeah.
order,
Go ahead.
sorry, so in order to be included or in order to participate, we are requesting permission to be included in this DORA district, especially as it relates to Schmidlap Lawn and Lot 23, as Kara stated.
Okay,
Excuse me, before we take a roll call, I had one question. I just didn't get unmuted fast enough. On the Schmidlap Lawn situation, oftentimes that space has been rented by private operations. And how is that going to be accomplished within the time frame of the DORA operating hours that it can be closed off to a private party, shall we say, like a wedding, for instance, and not have the public wandering through?
Kara, Jenny, well, I guess, do you want to speak first to your impressions and intentions, and then I can speak to my perspective?
So if the area would be rented, then I would say that event producer then has the option to either participate in the DORA or not. And then signage would be placed to state whether that was DORA was permitted into that event space or not. It would be my answer to that. Billy, do you have anything to add?
No, just that agreed that it would be an option essentially to either segregate as is currently done for an event with you know, individualized barricades or security, what have you, to have a segregated event or to have a more open event into the DORA.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion. Can we, or actually we just have the proposition. Can we have a motion to accept that?
So moved.
How about a second? All right.
Second.
Now we'll go to the roll call.
President Lindner?
Yes.
Vice President Getz?
I will vote yes for the motion with the understanding that we will provide feedback, and I assume that's through you, Billy, of strongly recommending an environmental solution to the cups. Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you,
Uh,
Billy.
next-
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Billy. Next on the list is the easement issue with the Cincinnati Ballet. So, Kara, you want to set that up?
Yes, thank you. Commissioners, this is an opportunity for us to take one more step further with our partners at the Cincinnati Ballet. As you are most likely aware, that the grounds are continuing to develop, and they are on track for their development timeline. And we are at a point in our discussions with them and in our work with them to discuss the what we had always known would be the addition of a driveway that would extend onto our property. So Mr. Schuckman is going to present to you kind of our idea for how we can most efficiently move forward with that in our partnership with the Cincinnati Ballet.
Thank you, and good morning again. So as you all know, the Cincinnati Ballet is creating a new home next to Johnston Park. In order to access their parking lot, which is adjacent to the park and which will also double as a performance venue, they need to build a driveway from Gilbert across the top of Johnston Park. The driveway and the lights to light the driveway in the parking lot also serve as a second means of egress from the Baldwin complex just north of the ballet building. So in order necessary, the easement, as pointed out in the report, would be enable the ballet to build the driveway, but will also require them to maintain it and do all future repair and replacement. The law department is now drafting the language of the easement, so the language is not now available, but we are asking the board to approve the easement as long as it contains the basic conditions that are outlined in the report that speak to maintenance, that speaks to repair, to park staff design review, and to the easement value. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions for Steve?
Just a quick question. I noticed later in your documents that as it relates to Johnston Park, that a second steering committee meeting had been held and a design direction was selected for this park. When will we hear about what those plans are, and how does this fit into those plans that we haven't seen yet?
Yeah, okay, so we are working on that schematic design. We haven't yet seen a cost estimate. It looks like we'll be able to bring that to the board in March to see that schematic design. And Commissioner Thomas is actually a member of the steering committee. So I'll have the design to present to you for approval and for comment, and the budget estimate again in March. And the design of the park has incorporated the driveway. So we've known from the outset that the driveway was to be expected.
Yeah, and Commissioner Getz, I will just further clarify. It was, I think the approval reference was just that it had come through the steering committee and had the agreement of the steering committee, not that that was something that Parks had generally committed to, but that's so that when we bring it to you, we can say this is the supported by the steering committee, and as Mr. Schuckman identified, available for your comment and question and direction at that point. So they've done a lot of the grunt work to get that to a point where we feel comfortable presenting it to you.
And let me just add that for the steering committee that the Walnut Hills community and the Mount Adams community have representatives on the steering committee, but so does the Art Museum and so does the Cincinnati Ballet. So they've been very much a part of the design process.
And the proposal, and Mr. Chair,
Yes,
the proposal here is that the construction, the maintenance is totally on their responsibility. We won't have any additional cost or responsibility in that.
That is correct.
Understood. Any other questions?
That includes things like snow removal?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I thought.
I would like to add two brief comments. One is that I believe that they're also signed up for beautification around the driveway. And second, as you proceed with the easement, I would hope that this would only inure to the benefit of the ballet, and that in the event of a property transfer, that easement would revert back to the parks.
Actually, the driveway also serves as another means of egress from the large garage that serves the Baldwin complex. So whether the ballet changes hands or not, there needs to be a requirement that the driveway would remain in place, but also be maintained by others, not by the park board.
I think that there's a balance in there, Commissioner North, because, and I do apologize that I had forgotten to mention that, that right now the reason that the driveway requires construction on our property is that months ago, we collectively as the park board were in agreement to the design concept with the ballet, which would allow for their facility, which would allow for their parking lot, which required the parking or the driveway to be placed outside of that. And that was kind of a conceptual design we all agreed to. I actually, I think with Commissioner North, with your comment is probably more in line with my personal viewpoint. And I apologize, Mr. Schuckman and I have not had a chance to speak about that. And to your comment, Commissioner North, then the thought would be, should the ballet ever vacate the property, that I would be supportive of the easement not going with that, and access to the Baldwin garage would need to be accommodated by whomever is a future developer, should that property be adjusted in any way. So I do apologize that Mr. Schuckman and I did not have a chance to discuss that. And I think the answer is somewhere in the middle there, that in perpetuity, whomever is in control of the property, that we hope the ballet occupies for another 100 years. But if there ever is somebody else in control of that property, they will need to solve for access to the Baldwin garage, and it should not inherently be our responsibility to maintain that easement. That would be something that we would work through with law to define.
Excuse me, so law, it's in their hands as we speak. Any timeline on when it's coming, when they'll actually have something in front of us?
I know I haven't heard a timeline. The easement still has to go through the city's coordinated report process and has to go to the planning commission. So we just wanted to try to get the approvals lined up, and I expect that will be happening during the month of February.
Yeah, I do agree with Mr. Schuckman. I think it is a timely manner. These kinds of requests come to you in different forms. Sometimes we come to you with a fully formed document that you can agree to. And there have been times where we've brought something to you kind of at the beginning stages, where we've asked you to consider and approve a framework within which that myself, working with law and working with the partner, can execute a contract. And that is where this project is at this moment. Is that we are bringing this to you in advance, asking for parameters within which I would work within in order to execute this contract.
Okay, any other questions for Steve? All right, so do we have a motion here to accept, or can we have a motion to accept the easement? I guess it's not completely finished, but generally the parameters have been laid out. And can we have a motion to accept what has been presented?
I would move that we approve the granting of an easement with the restriction of it reverting back to the park board should there be a change in ownership.
Everybody good with that? Looks like it.
I second.
All right. Mary, roll call.
President Linder,
Yes?
Vice President Getz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. We missed your cat.
He's around somewhere.
Okay, I'm sure he is. Getting into trouble. Okay, next item on the agenda is donation acceptance. Craig is going to lead us through that.
Good morning, Commissioners. The first item up is in-kind contributions. Staff is respectfully requesting the board approve to accept in-kind contributions in the amount of $48,745.02.
All right, any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, can we have a motion to accept the $48,745.02 from our good friends at the foundation?
So moved.
We have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Linda. Mary?
President Linder,
Yes?
Vice President Getz,
I will agree.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next one is the direct donations.
Thank you. Yes, the next one is direct donations. This are two entities. One's the Parks Foundation, and with the Parks Foundations, we do try to attempt to capture these within the all-in budget process that's approved once annually. But these are items that were not captured in there. And additionally, the Alt Park Advisory Council, there is amendment to the $10,000. They actually raised $11,000. So I do want to amend that to $11,000 cherry tree donation. So staff respectfully request the board approve and accept the donations made in the amount of $51,780.
All right, any questions or comments?
I had just a comment. This is incredible. I think we are very appreciative of the foundation's work to support the Cincinnati parks. Are these, Kara, are these new endowments that the Park Foundation has just received?
I do not believe that is the case, Commissioner Getz. I cannot speak with certainty. I know one of the advancements that we are making in our relationship with the Park Foundation is for us as the park board to have a firm understanding of what resources are available currently within the Parks Foundation. So I am unable to definitively answer your question at this moment. We can certainly find out.
So Craig, you said that we try to, on an annual basis, as I know you do, when we are putting together a budget for the year of revenues and what we want to do with that. These are items that we weren't aware that were there sitting at the foundation. Is that correct?
Commissioner Getz, yes, that is correct. We do attempt to try to capture these, and these are items, especially the wonderful Oliver Family Endowment distribution. This is one that was not captured since I joined almost going on 2 years. So that was something I did reach out to them and clarified at least that amount, because there's a larger amount, and that was received by the Parks Foundation actually in 2013. So that's something that we definitely want to capture those going forward.
So we had not put in a grant request for these funds or anything. I just was curious how these showed up.
These are direct distributions.
Gotcha.
Unlike the grant request where we have to submit a grant to receive the money, these are direct distributions to the park board.
This is this is a great work of the foundation creating these endowments for us on an ongoing basis. So I know I personally would move that we accept these.
I just want to make it, excuse me, President
Please.
Linda, it's Susie. The thing that I'm puzzled about all of this is that, is there a way that we can better understand what's in the foundation's, what's in their buckets? You know, we'd have no idea what's in what their, you know, what the money looks like, what they've collected, you know, and we don't seem to have a process to have their books open to us. How do we know what to ask for if we don't know what they have?
I would be happy to respond to your question, Commissioner Castellini. That is absolutely something that we're working forward on with our partners at the Cincinnati Parks Foundation. Just before COVID came upon us, we had established a relationship between the two executive committees, between the Park Board and the Park Foundation. So Commissioners Lindner and Getz and myself have been representing the Park Board, and due to multiple reasons, those conversations have lagged, but we are getting back on track, and that is certainly one of the conversations that is that we are working towards, is to having that complete picture. So your question and concern is certainly representative of the Park Board's viewpoint. And I guess my answer to that is that we are working towards establishing that process.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the donations here. If we have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Mary, roll call.
President Lindner,
Yes.
Vice President Getz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, Craig, you're still with us on the grant application / acceptance from the Parks Foundation.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Oh, yes, Linda.
Let me ask a question for clarification related to what we just approved. As I look specifically at the Oliver, the donation for Smale Riverfront support, one of the things we have an agreement with the foundation on is that their fundraising over the next 5 years or whatever the time period will be specifically for development of Lot 23. So my question is, how do these contributions that come in, are they allocated specifically for something, or might that be a part of that funding that we've already identified?
And
Can you answer that, Craig? Or Kara?
I guess unless Mr. Sherman has more information, I would say, Commissioner Thomas, I think that goes into our understanding of the grant sources available, or the endowment sources available. I know that the foundation works very closely with their donors, and in some of their relationships, there are restrictions that are placed. To this one specifically, unfortunately, at this moment, I am unable to comment to you what, if any, restrictions have been placed on this fund specifically, other than to just continue to say that is something that we are working towards, and an absolutely valid question from you.
Thank
Craig,
you.
do you know anything more about restrictions from this account specifically?
I could read the actual document if we have time, but it's I know it's for operational maintenance support, but it's for Smale Riverfront Park. It's a very broad acceptance for this. So luckily it's not really restricted for certain areas, as you see on the other items where it may be just the anniversary garden. This is for the whole Smale Riverfront Park.
Okay. Craig, you want to talk to us about the next grant application and acceptance?
Yes, the next one is coming from the Parks Foundation. It's grant application acceptance. It's for $100,000 for the plaza for the Ezra Charles statue. The grant will support design and construction of the accessible plaza for the statue. Approximately $9,000 will be used for design and $91,000 for construction. Staff requests the board approve the application and acceptance for the $100,000.
All right. Questions on this project?
So is this the full amount that's been collected for this purpose, or is there a larger amount that we will be getting in the future, or where did the 100,000, is that the total amount?
I believe the answer to that is no. And I cannot speak at this moment how many total dollars were raised. What this is encompassing is the construction work that is required. So, we have lots of statues that have been created that are going into the park. So the Ezra Charles statue and our relationship with the Cincinnati Parks Foundation, the Miriam Spencer statue, down for Smale Riverfront Park. And so this $100,000 is reflective of the physical construction work that is required to complete the capital project. And that is the relationship to the $100,000. I believe any future or any other dollars that had been raised are associated with the physical construction of the statue, as well as maintenance support.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is, I'm excited about getting this statue in place. I think it's an incredible recognition, and I think it's going to be great for that corridor. This may relate, I'm not sure if is this the $100,000 from the Hale Foundation that went to the foundation for completing this project?
Again, I don't know that I know that the Hale Foundation was a significant contributor to the project, and so excited that the foundation has completed their fundraising goals. I am not certain if this $100,000 was designated from the Hale Foundation for this portion of the project, or rather the contributions from the Hale Foundation were just incorporated in the sum total required fundraising total. So it's a poor answer to your question. I'm not sure of the direct correlation between the 100,000 that is being distributed.
Commissioner Getz, we can get some clarity around that for you. I know traditionally we do provide where the dollars are coming from.
Great. Well, overall, I think this is great. I'm thrilled that we're moving forward, and a lot of kudos to the foundation for bridging the final amount to be able to move forward with the project. So, pending any other comments, I will be glad to move for acceptance of the $100,000. Are we going to be the contractor, or is that contractor already identified?
If I may, this $100,000, if the board accepts it, will be put into a capital account, and then we would procure the construction through the city process.
Perfect. Well, I would move that we accept the $100,000 with gratitude.
Any other comments or questions?
A second.
All right, thank you, Linda. And I would wholeheartedly agree with Jim's gratitude. This is going to be a really cool statue. So, Mary, you want to take us through the roll call?
President Linder?
Yes.
Vice President Getz?
Absolutely, yes.
Commissioner Castellini?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner North?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is design contracts for the operations center. And Cindy is going to take us through that. Kara, I don't know if is there any setup that you'd like to, any preamble to this that you would like to share, or just go straight over to Cindy?
Yeah, just a brief comment. This is in relationship to one of the conversations that we had when we were creating our capital budget plan in regards to a next step that could, and from our perspective as staff, should be taken to get a firm understanding of what this transition will look like for us. So then with that, I will turn it over to Ms. France to kind of walk you through what this contract will entail.
Thank you, Kara. Good morning. We did go through an RFP process and we had 3 different teams put together submittals for us. KZF Design is a consultant team we've worked with often in the past. And they gave us a price proposal that was based on the total construction dollars that we end up determining how much the project is going to be worth. So what we asked them to do was to break out just the schematic design portion. So the $57,750 that we are asking the board to approve is just for schematic design services. And with that, it will give us a cost estimate that we will be able to really wrap our head around and understand what we're going to need to fund this project. So we are just asking for board approval, and at this point, the $57,750 would just come out of our capital infrastructure.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. Questions for Cindy?
I thought this was coming out of our 780 account or 980, the infrastructure account, as opposed to the capital account, the permanent improvement account, I'm sorry.
I think the initial $57,750 was going to come out of capital and then would perhaps be reimbursed from another fund down the road when we get funding.
I appreciate Commissioner Getz's question. In our board report, I think we made an error. We recommended that the fees would come from one location, and then we said it would come from another location. I think that's an error on our part, Commissioner Getz. I refer my personal recollection, referring back to our capital budget discussions, was the inclusion of that into the capital budget, existing capital budget. So that is certainly available for your discussion, and I would look to Mr. Chairman to, if we are discussing any different funds. Excuse me.
I guess my question is it available that we can take it out of the permanent improvement fund?
If I may, it would be available, but it will hinder the timing of this project, the project timeline. Sydney, what is the timeline for this project?
I think we're trying to get them started on schematic design as soon as possible so that we can get an idea of what the overall construction cost is going to be. Okay, once we close on the property, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have 21 months to have a new facility designed and constructed.
That's correct. And we did approve it. The board approved it coming out of the initial $57,000 out of the existing capital budget. Those dollars are available in Fund 752, but since getting funds out of that permanent improvement fund takes an ordinance by council, that wouldn't align with our timing.
Follow-up question then, when we approved the sale of the property, we approved it with the contention that the proceeds from the sale would come to the park board to facilitate the cost to relocate. And additionally, the additional funds, I think it was close to $750 or $450, I can't remember, related to the other piece of property that was part of the sale. Have we gotten confirmation that, number one, the sale document has been approved by the city, and number two, was it approved with those contingencies that we will get those funds to offset the cost of our relocation.
I will make a brief comment, and then if our ACM, Mr. Jewick, is with us, he might be able to comment further. I can't. He's with us on Zoom. I'm not sure if he's available. To the best of my knowledge, based on our last communications with Mr. Jewick, that those closing documents have not been prepared. Taking into strong consideration where we are at in that process, and that those requests have not been, hi John, have not been finalized. I recognize that this request is being made prior to those approvals, and my recommendation for the commissioners to enter into this contract is to give us an incredibly sound footing by which to not only have you already asked for those contingencies, but the knowledge that we may need to ask for more. Mr. Jewick, would you be willing to comment on the current status of the project?
Yeah, thank you. And hi, everyone. Good to be with you. Thank you, as always, for all of your tremendous service to our Parks Department. So full honesty, I'm dealing with a number of different things today as we have a council meeting here today, and I'm prepping some things for that. So I'm happy to weigh in, but if you could just kind of repeat the question, that would help me, so I don't speak to something that's not what you're looking for.
Sure. And Commissioner Getz, I'll attempt to capture it. Correct me if I get anything wrong. The question, John, was just the status of where we are. The last time the commissioners had spoken about this, they had approved, or their portion of the approval to sell the property with the contingencies of, and there were several. One was the ability to obtain the funds from the sale of our property. The second was the request for the sale of funds from the sale of the additional city property, as well as the commitment to the relocation location, of which we had the communication from the city manager, which guaranteed the utilization of the facility and was designated her support for the council to approve the proceeds from our property. So just if you're able to provide an update on where the commissioner's request is at this moment and where the project is at this moment, because if we are determining to expend these funds, certainly need to have full knowledge of where we are at in the process.
Yep, that's great. Thank you. And there are a lot of moving parts on this project, and it definitely feels a bit like herding cats, especially working with the federal government. And I expect that obviously there will be some change in personnel. So while I've stayed in close touch with the GSA and the CDC, it's always a bit of a moving target, and quite frankly, my last communication with them was at the end of 2020, so the end of last year, and I need to check back in with that. This is very much still moving forward, so nothing has changed in terms of this. It's still all systems go. This is a priority for the city. Obviously, the most important thing to all of us is that we retain these NIOSH jobs in the city of Cincinnati, because that's incredibly important for our earnings tax. But also, I think this is going to be a great redevelopment opportunity for that whole part of Uptown and that corner. And from here at City Hall, we truly appreciate Parks' willingness and flexibility in working with us on this. I think this serves an important city purpose, this relocation, but obviously it's disruptive to Parks in that you have to relocate some of your people and facilities and equipment and all of that. So I've been committed to working with you on all of that. I wouldn't say that there's a big update since the last time we talked. Nothing has really moved from the federal side in terms of kind of closing on that offer. The city manager communicated the city's position, and that remains our position. So I would refer back to what she said in those documents, because I don't want to misrepresent that in any way. But basically, in general terms, our position has been any proceeds that we get from the sale would remain with Parks to assist with the relocation, although we may also get some federal resources in terms of relocation expenses as well. So we don't want to balkanize, city money with what could be federal money, because we want to be good stewards of the city resources as well. So I think the first dollars in on relocation would be the federal money, and then any proceeds we get on top of that. Our position has basically been that monies that we get from the proceeds would stay with Parks, under the condition that council has to approve all that. And certainly I've made that case to council, but I can never speak in my job for city council, because you're talking about 9 elected officials that have minds of their own. But certainly our intention is that the proceeds would stay with the project and would assist with the relocation. We're also putting on the table the former Police District 5 headquarters on Ludlow. And I think we've made that very clear. That's obviously a city asset that could be used for many number of things. And quite frankly, I've had interest from other parties, non-city parties, in the use of that building. And I've said, no, our intention is for that to be the new home for this parks maintenance facility. So long story short, that's where we are. It feels both that a lot is happening, but also we're a bit running in place because we're somewhat of the mercy of the federal government. And obviously with a change in administration, you're going to have a number of different players and people, and I can't speak to what their level of priority on this is going to be. But overall, we're still moving forward. Nothing's changed there. It's still the intention to do this redevelopment, to move the parks maintenance facility, to use the proceeds, any proceeds we get from the sale, to facilitate this move of parks. I think our only limiting principle has been that we're not going to put additional city dollars on top of whatever we get from the feds in terms of relocation and sale proceeds. But we're trying to be completely fair and transparent and a good partner on this, and certainly Kara and her staff have been as well. So far to date, this has been a good partnership, and I'm always happy to talk or answer any questions or shed any insights that I have. So thank you all.
Okay, thank you, John. Any other questions regarding the $57,000 for the project?
I'm sorry to slow us down. I'm just not making the full connection here on why we have to. It sounds like we have to take from funds to accelerate a project, to make a move to somewhere on a date that is at least 21 months away. It sounds like really far away, because we don't even have a closing date set with NIOSH. So I can't make sense of why we wouldn't go through, it sounds like, the hurdles to get the funding from the right place. Or maybe this isn't even an issue, but
if I could, I think you're absolutely right, Molly, from the standpoint that I think the park board is fully on board with what we're talking about here and fully supportive of the sale of our property for the NIOSH project. I think absolutely. But I have the same concern that you do, in that we are stepping out now and committing precious park funds to expend up to 60,000 here. And I fully understand that city manager's office cannot guarantee anything to us, because we're at the whim, or I shouldn't say whim, we are at the mercy of the 9 elected officials who will make the final decision. But I don't feel that parks should spend, and we've had this conversation from day one on this project that parks should not be spending our very precious park dollars without having commitments for where the money is going to come from going forward. And so I would still be very, very supportive of the project. Nothing has changed in the past month or when the last time we talked about this, as John just said. So I don't understand why we continue to want to move forward and spend our money when we'll have 21 months, but we don't even know what the terms and conditions will be when that final document is signed. So I would propose tabling this until we have a commitment that the sale is going to take place.
Don?
Yeah, if I could, thank you. I don't disagree with anything necessarily that was just said. I mean, I am comfortable tabling this. That doesn't pose any problems from my point of view. I don't think it urgently has to be moved on this date. I do think that we will begin to need to make preparations for this move. And I understand that there are probably going to be costs that are incurred. I mean, this is a pretty significant parks facility. A lot of people and equipment work out of there. So I understand the point that both commissioners are making, and I respect that. I don't think it's urgent that we move on this today. I think it can be tabled, but just fair disclosure, I think a day will come that we have to move. And I just would prepare the commissioners for the eventuality, that we may have to do some things to begin to prepare for this move to Ludlow before everything that we like or want or would expect the federal government to do in terms of, dotting all their I's, crossing all their T's, doing all the closing, getting those funds. And that, unfortunately, is just sometimes the way the cookie crumbles when you're dealing with one of the largest bureaucracies on earth. But I have no heartburn over tabling this today.
Well, and if I could, I'm sorry to, I fully agree with that. And John, I am fully, as I said earlier, fully supportive of wanting this to get done. But in all due respect, I also want to represent the park board here. And I want to be treated equitably. Just because the park board has other sources of funds, I don't know that you would be asking the Public Services Department to come up with funding somehow to accomplish a movement of a working facility or office space for another department. So again, we are limited at the park board with very limited resources for maintaining our parks. And we continue to ask for more money from the city to do that. And I just want to make sure that we up front, knowing that this is coming down the road, that we are clear that from a park board standpoint, we should not be asked to use our limited funds for an office move such as this to accomplish what is in the best interest for the city. So I would again move that we table this and that we continue to have those discussions so that we will be ready to move very quickly when we need to do so.
And I don't disagree with anything that was said. I don't think that parks should be asked out of their limited funds to, in essence, pay for this relocation that they didn't really ask for. I do think, however, again, full disclosure, that we may run into a timing of money issue at some point, in that most of the money, if you think about it, for this whole complicated transaction is in one way or another coming from the federal government. It's not really coming from the city per se either. It's coming from the feds, and they're really the ones driving this whole train with the NIOSH relocation. It is a federal project. And I think it's a good project. I want to be very clear. I think overall it advances the interests of the city, of the region. You know, it serves a lot of purposes. The earnings tax is incredibly important to the city. So I view it as a good project. It's being driven by the feds. They're going to pay for most of it. And I just want to be on notice that really what it comes down to is what the board may be asked to do at some point is, in essence, advance some monies on the front end to help with some of the relocation, with the understanding that I will fight and the city will fight and everyone will be fighting to get paid back on the back end out of both the sale proceeds and also, you know, we're pushing them hard really to cover most, if not all, of the relocation expenses. And we don't have full assent from them yet, but that's been our position, is that they need to pick up the tab for relocation. I just am a realist in terms of having worked with the feds on a lot of projects. I mean, sometimes you get paid back, but it can be 2 or 3 years down the road because it's so bureaucratic and there's so much that goes into it. So just want to have eyes open about that, but I don't disagree with anything that's been said, and thank you.
I'd like to, can I speak to timing for just a moment? That the 21 months sounds like a long time, but it isn't, given the fact that to just proceed with schematic design and a cost estimate could be a 3 to 6 month effort. Then we still have to, after the closing takes place, we have to produce construction drawings and we have to put it out to bid. Then we have to renovate District 5 and build additional buildings. So to do all that within 21 months is actually something of a stretch.
And the final comment that I will make, just to support why we had included this in the agenda today with the recommendation to approve. Certainly that is the discretion of the commissioners to make that determination about timeline. But my biggest concern as it relates to the financing of this move, my biggest concern continues to be that we expect there to be a gap based on our best guesses, that we expect for there to be a gap between what it will actually cost us to relocate and the funds that we have agreed to in the sale of the property. So we expect that the sale of our property will not cover the expense of the move, which is why we asked for the additional proceeds from the additional city property, still recognizing that we may not get to where we need to be in order to move. So somewhere, somehow, to get a hold on what this move will actually cost us, and the relocation costs from GSA are nominal. They certainly will produce some money, but we're probably talking tens of thousands rather than millions. Just as your administrator, just being concerned that to ACM Duick's response of the city manager's office being very supportive of all of the dollars from the proceeds coming to us, which the letter only committed to the proceeds from our sale, her support of our sale. But even if the city manager did take the position of all of the sale dollars coming to parks, my deep concern that will not cover the cost of relocation. So at some point then, should the commissioners remain adamant not to expend park resources, we would know what that difference is so that we can make a firm case to City Council, not only to distribute the funds from the sale, but potentially additional resources.
Director Kish, just to clarify, my proposal would not be to shelf this pursuit. It would simply be to use this opportunity to access the appropriate funding for this request. The NIOSH deal was announced years ago. So I think John just clearly stated there's no indication of when necessarily we'll hear more or when we'll have a start date. So I think we have the opportunity to access the appropriate funding source so we're not dipping into vital resources. So is that an option to present this? It sounds like it needs to be presented to council.
Yeah, I think that's why I've moved a table, and during that time period, I think we should take whatever steps is necessary to appropriate these funds out of the permanent improvement fund versus out of the capital money that we have.
So, Mr. Chair, to Commissioner Getz, then it's not tabling, it's just following the procedure we would have done anyway, because what we were asking for is an exception to that procedure here. So given that it doesn't sound like we're under the gun in terms of timing, we have the time to move ahead with getting the funds in the appropriate way.
Right. I'm hearing a lot of feedback. My motion to table would be to only table approval of the expenditure of the $57,000 till next month, if that's the time, to give us time to appropriately request funding from the personal improvement fund. My position is I would not like to approve today that we spend these funds, because if we approve it today, we are saying that we're going forward out of our capital funds. And I'm saying, let's table the approval of this document until we go through the process of getting it approved. And we know, since we're at the mercy of the council, to know that they have approved us taking this out of our permanent improvement fund.
Okay.
Just for clarification, then, if the distribution from the park permanent improvement fund of $752, I guess I would still consider that that's park resources. So is the presumption that council would place $57,000 in there, or that we would use $57,000 of our current resources?
I'm reacting to the fact that I thought I heard that for us to use park fund 750, whatever it is, personal permanent improvement fund, requires an action by council. If that is not correct, I mean, can we do it, or is that correct? Do we need council approval to use our? Yes, the answer is yes. So that's why I am saying, see if council will approve our use of that, so that they can show their support for helping us in making this project work.
Just to make clear, the Park Permanent Improvement Fund is only for parks. It's proceeds from sales and leases. So it is our money, but in order to use the money, takes an ordinance from council. So it's not new resources.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why I don't know what I would then, I don't know how you want me to say this. I move that we ask for council approval to access park permanent improvement funding to enter into a contract with KZF, and that we table that approval of this contract until we have the approval of council to access that park permanent improvement fund. Is that clear?
No.
Well said. I approve. I second it.
Commissioner Getz, I think the clarification that I would like is whether or not the park commissioners would want us to return, or if you would just be approving me entering into that contract should, at the conclusion of that ordinance, and whether or not.
I am more than happy. I mean, we haven't talked a whole lot, but I am more than happy to say that we approve, we delegate to you entering into the contract once we have approval from council to access park improvement funds as the funding source for that contract. And it's a good thing that this is being recorded so Mary knows exactly what the final motion was. So that's my motion.
Okay, Linda, are you clear on that?
Oh, yes, as mud.
Okay, so we
let
know.
Let me just,
go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just want to make sure the contract is not in question.
Correct.
The source of funding for it is.
Correct.
So the motion is to accept the contract with the source of funding being whatever that.
52 or permanent improvement fund.
That's it, right?
Well, no, technically we are delegating, we're not approving the contract. We're giving the director the authority to approve the contract. The one question I want to ask specifically, as we're saying, quote, the contract, we are only signing a contract with KZF for the $57,000. Is that correct?
The contract would be for $57,750, and then we would add additional money onto it as an amendment once we have established a total construction budget.
So we would do add-on contracts or amendments to the contract, but initially the contract is only for the $57,000.
$57,750, correct? Yeah.
Perfect.
And then Commissioner Thomas, to kind of reiterate what Commissioner Getz says, is that we would not, should that funding source not be approved, we would not enter into the contract.
Yes, got it. Okay. Thank you.
We'd come back to you with a different solution.
Yes. Okay.
Now, any other questions regarding this? Okay, hearing none. There is a motion on the table or a proposition to, accept this as a motion. Can we have it? Or Jim, did you already put that motion out there, I guess?
Yeah,
Right.
and seconded by Susan.
Okay, Susie already seconded it. So thank you. Mary, it's time for a roll call.
President Lindner,
Yes.
Vice President Getz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're moving on to contracts that are over $50,000.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. On the timeline on that project, we talk about 21 months. Is there any way of getting a better definitive estimate of what that really is in terms of months? Not it'll start on March 1st and be completed on whatever date, but just the big items and milestones that make up that 21 months. Is there any way of getting some additional information on that?
We can provide that. Basically from the date of closing, the clock starts ticking, and that 21 months is the entire time we have to design and put out to bid and build a replacement facility and move into it.
So that is defined by some endpoint we need to hit, or the time required to do the things we have to do?
The agreement that the board approved and hasn't yet gone to council had conditions on it for the sale of our property. And one of those conditions was that we would be able to stay at our current Reading Road site for 21 months, starting with the date of closing. And after that, we don't have a home.
Okay, so that's a time frame we are already committed to.
Yes.
Not how long things will take, but that's
yes,
how long we have to do whatever it is we need to do.
Yeah, hence our concern to get through the design and the bidding process, hoping the bids come in on budget and we only have to bid at once. Yes.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Okay. Cindy, the contract's over $50,000.
Yes, this one's easy. We have four projects that we've gotten pricing back on, and because they're all valued at over $50,000, we just need to get board approval so we can proceed. One of the projects was publicly bid. It's the Blue Spruce Road Rehab Project. The rest of them were all with just our set term contracts that we have through purchasing.
Okay. Any questions regarding these contracts? By golly, you're right. It was easy. Can we have a motion to accept these contracts as presented?
So moved.
How about a second?
Second.
Okay, Mary.
President Linder,
Yes.
Vice President Getz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North.
I'm sorry, everyone, I had to step away for a moment, but I think you're approving these construction contracts over 50,000.
Yes. All right.
Could we just get your yes or no approval on that, Ms. North?
Oh, sorry, I said yes.
Oh, thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're moving on to staff comments.
Hello. Good
Hi,
morning,
Rocky.
everybody. And again, welcome to you, Commissioner North. Look forward to working with you. Kara has asked me at the end of every meeting to sort of play free safety and highlight some items that we have amongst the staff that you've probably heard of in one way, shape, or form or another, but that we want to just highlight and make sure on people's radar. And also for that dozen or so people that are watching us on YouTube. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that on Monday, as you know, it was Martin Luther King Day, and we were once again very proud to participate in our National Day of Service, and had a really great response. We turned out 167 volunteers to come out and support us for a total of 772 volunteer hours just on Monday alone. And they participated in a variety of projects at 8 different parks that included litter removal, park beautification, maintenance efforts, invasive removals, and the parks included Martin Luther King Park in Avondale, McAvoy, Inwood, Washington Park, Sawyer Point, Walnut Woods, on an event in coordination with the Civic Garden Center. We're glad to have their participation, and also California Woods. So I wanted to make you aware of that and thank all the volunteers who came out to help. Really have to give a props to Crystal Johnson-Roberts, our volunteer coordinator, who pulled all that off. It's always a little intimidating when you're talking about January and outdoor projects, and I'm just amazed that we get that many folks to turn out. A couple of updates on park project recognitions for completed projects. You know, as you know, we can't do in-person events. We're pretty limited on what we can do right now because of the COVID spike and the pandemic. But we did want to let you know that within the next couple of weeks, we've been working with project leaders for the Kyle Plush Pavilion, the Stanberry Park Advisory Council, the Parks Foundation, as well as the Plush and Zarin families. We've been coordinating with them on sort of a virtual recognition that we should be unveiling within the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be sure to bring that to your attention. And then the other, as I think Kara mentioned earlier, was the Miriam M. Barry Spencer statue, which is a project that's spearheaded by the Women's City Club of Greater Cincinnati. They're placing a statue at the Phyllis Smale Riverfront Park. And so this is very exciting. We've been working with them to kind of video and capture the production of the statue as it's been happening, and also do some storytelling about just why it's so important and why it's such a great symbol, you know, for our city. So that will be coming out shortly too. And Commissioner Thomas helped us with that video as well. So we look forward to seeing that finished project. Also, as you approved today from the Alt Park Advisory Council, that's the $11,000 gift that they fundraised for to help support maintenance of the very popular Weeping Cherry Tree Grove. So actually later today, we want to thank President Lindner and Kara for coming out and helping us with that recognition, which is going to be virtual as well, and for hopefully finding an oversized bank that will be able to cash the oversized check-in that they're going to be presenting us with today. So we thank you all for your help with that. As was discussed earlier on the community park improvement request process, as we talked about earlier, this is something that staff has developed. It's an opportunity for communities to submit park improvement project ideas, and then it seeks to provide a standardized way for the staff to vet those projects for how they should proceed forward, if they should proceed forward. We have assembled this online submission process so that we make it easy as possible for people. And we plan to open that up to the public on February 1st. So at that time, we're going to make everybody aware of this opportunity, including all of our friends with our CPACs, different communities that we've worked with. And we also, as you know, have a handful of projects where people have approached us over the last several months, like the Denur dog park proposal that's been discussed. There's a Mount Echo dog park proposal, and there's a few others. And so we're going to make them aware, make sure they understand that this is an open opportunity, provide them any resources they might need to help them with their proposals. And as you mentioned, it requested earlier, Commissioner Getz, we will be happy to report monthly on what's been received and what the status of those various projects are. The submission, in terms of timeline, the submission is essentially open. At any time, people will be able to submit. But if an item wants to be considered for the upcoming year's capital budget, if there's that funding component, there's likely going to be capital funding needed. They would want to apply by July 1st of each year. So we're going to make sure that people understand that also. So look for that. That'll be happening on February 1st. And feel free to share that with any groups that you're involved with, anybody that's interested in approaching, that has an idea for improving a park. We want to hear from them and look forward to them making their submissions. Finally, as you know, unfortunately, Crone Conservatory has remained closed because of the pandemic, but we wanted to let you know that the staff has still been working very hard and is putting the plant material to good use. They've set up a process whereby people can purchase flowers online from Crone. This allows people to support Crone, generate some income. As you know, we've lost revenue as a result of them being closed. People can support us and do it all in a COVID-safe manner. So they're offering deals on a whole bunch of different types of flowers in the coming weeks, including lilies, hydrangeas, daffodils, tulips, a variety of different pricing. For the week of Valentine's Day, for example, they've put together a flower arrangement that would be useful in a Valentine's Day situation. And I'm happy to say they're going like hotcakes. This week alone, for example, we had an allotment of 224 plants and they sold out in 24 hours. And so they'll have different varieties that they're generating each week, and actually will work out to be a decent amount of revenue. I think what we've been talking about internally, this has been another good example of thinking outside the box, thinking differently as a result of the pandemic. But this could end up being a permanent feature that we offer out of Crone, because there's such that brand identity people have with Crone. They want to support it. This is something we can continue even post-pandemic as a way to generate additional revenue, interest, and support for Crone. So we're really excited about it. The staff at the leadership of the new manager, Mark House, has just been fantastic. And it also speaks to this project, as well as the Martin Luther King Day volunteer recruitment response. It really speaks to the power of and effectiveness of our digital marketing efforts, which, as you know, we continue to work on. So I wanted to make you aware of those, and that concludes my updates.
Thank you, Rocky. Any questions or comments for Rocky?
A couple quick ones. If all the recognitions and virtual ribbon cutting, so to speak, if that's all being done virtual, can you share those opportunities with the rest of the directors, the commissioners, so that if we have an opportunity or if there's a project that we want to log on for that, can you share that information with us? So that's number one. Number two, a specific question on the Denor dog park. Since they have already presented to the park commissioners and we said that the director agreed to handle some community input on that, are we now asking them to go back and start this process over again?
I'll answer that. I don't feel that it is starting over again. What it is filtering through that system the same way we would any other one. So yes, we one of the near first steps that will occur could potentially take us into the community discussions. But I feel that because it is appropriate, I feel that it is appropriate to assist them with getting into the system so that we can look at this equitably. I would think we've technically been approached by multiple communities who have asked for the same thing. I think that the element that it had come to the board was, and the request from the board to just engage in community discussions was, I don't know if you remember that meeting, but there was quite a bit of public comment that came with that meeting then. So I think it's in the best interest of the project to filter them through the system, and it'll get through to further steps. So that is my response to your question of, because it's already come to the board. My recommendation is that we bring that request the same as the formal letters that we've received from Mount Echo regarding their request for a dog park. That way we are approaching all community requests equitably. At the time that we brought that community request to the board, we did not have a process in place.
So the answer to your question is that even though they've presented to us and we agreed to move forward with community engagement, you're saying that they now go back to the beginning of this process and fall into line with everyone else. Is that what that's what I just heard you say? And this is my concern about bureaucracy. And this is my concern with the board has already heard this. And now we are saying, no, we don't, we're not going to move forward. We want to go back to start the process over again, even though they've already presented to the board. I believe
what occurred is that the commissioners asked for community input to be assessed because there was an incredible public response to that request. So I did not interpret that as the board providing direction about like, hey, we think this is a good project, please move forward with public comment. I believe because we did not have a system in place, that was an appropriate response from the commissioners to say, hey, we should probably get some public comment on this, because although we had the Denor group, we had dozens of individuals show up And it just, at that moment, we did not have that process, and we have a process now.
I recognize that, and I applaud the approach. Again, I do think, as we discussed when this was first brought up, that that's an incredibly bureaucratic process that you're trying to establish. And that's why there's a need for us to be aware each month when these types of projects come forward. My concern, Kara, is, and we'll talk about this a little bit in executive session, obviously, but the board is not driven solely on public input that there may be certain people that disagree with the project. So it was not the board's direction that we get public input because of any expressed opposition to this. That is part of the normal course, is to further get, no matter if there's opposition or not expressed at a meeting, part of the process is always to get public input. So again, I believe that we're going backwards now, and we're now going to put a group that has done a lot of work and already did a full presentation to us. We're putting them back at the beginning of a bureaucratic process, which I don't think is actually fair to them.
What we had not assessed prior to the board presentation was the viability of the project within our system. We had been approached by a group who wanted a project to be completed, or was advocating for a project to be completed. At that point, because we did not have a system in place, we assigned them onto our agenda. And I think it was appropriate that the park board asked for further community input. What this process will allow us to do is that community input requires staff resources. It requires significant staff resources. And not every single idea that is proposed to the park board, I get at least one call a week asking for some improvement to be made in our system. Not every requested improvement will be justified to receive the staff resources for public input. My desire to interact with the Denor group through this new process is to begin with those discussions that we are going to require of any other community-driven idea. Is it an appropriate consideration for that park? Is it something that is already currently funded and is not needing conversation? Is there community support or community opposition? Is there any funding resources available? Those are the kind of details that are going to be included in the first round of or required for the application. And to make this equitable, then not every project will be moving on in the process and receive the staffing resources. So I recognize that when this group came forward and presented, at that moment, we did not have a process in place. So we invited them to the park board. It was actually myself who said, yes, let's put this on the agenda, because we did not have a process in place. And that was, an incredibly unfortunate timing for that. And then the project got lost because the COVID response was requiring of our attention. My desire is that effectively, even though that step did occur, our staff has not answered the baseline questions that we have set through that process as a minimum of whether or not future staffing resources should be identified or should be committed. But I understand your desire. I think it would be an unequitable commitment moving forward without bringing them into this process.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Linda?
I am often looking to separate issues that I think get conflated inappropriately. And I think this is one. We talked about getting a process for hearing community ideas separate from the dog park. That was something that was happening because every month there was somebody, as Kara has said, saying, why don't we do this in this park? Why don't we do this? And the staff would take time to evaluate those. And I remember specifically saying, what if we had a time frame where we said to the community, if you've got ideas, give them to us now. We'll sort through those, vet them, and then we'll respond. But we won't be responding to everything as it comes. So, and I think that's right. I was very glad when we got that in place. We talked about the dog park. They came in and presented. We didn't have a process at the time. So we were using the process that we would typically use when people show up. We say, okay, we need to get some additional information on this, et cetera, et cetera. I believe that that's what we ought to do in this case, that we may be guided by the new thinking that we've applied to this process, but I don't think we should put them back to the beginning to do a process that wasn't in place when they showed up to us. We ought to say when this is going to be implemented, that at this date, any projects that communities are interested in should go through this process. But the ones that are on the table now that we've already heard about, we can use the elements of that process to guide us in the evaluation, but I don't think we should have them go back and whatever, fill out forms or submit online or whatever that process says. That's where I am.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments regarding the Denora Dog Park and where they should land in the spectrum of the process? No, okay. So what do we want to do? We want to make a decision here on specifically regarding Denora, and would Denora then represent the last one off the boat or on the boat before the everybody else gets funneled through the new process? Is there anybody else out there that potentially would be in a similar situation?
I don't recall that we've had any other presentations that we haven't taken forward,
Okay.
one way or another.
So Linda, what I heard you say was let's kind of not put them back to square one, but keep them in the queue or in the timeline that they're currently in, but applying what those call it new lenses and hurdles, gates, whatever you want to call them, that are established for the new process. Let's use those to call it help guide us and staff towards what we want to do with respect to the Denora Park.
That's it exactly. And the other piece of that is announce to the public what this process is going to be, when it's going to be available, so that going forward, people are clear that they can't just call the staff or call or show up at a meeting and say, I think you ought to build this in this park.
Okay. Any other comment? And help me out, Carrie. Has this call it new approach been communicated yet to the public as it relates to call it the new rules of engagement for desired new park projects?
Yeah, as Rocky announced in his comments, like this is intended to be distributed and made public on February 1st, I believe it was, Rocky.
Okay.
And that will include an extensive education campaign, as well as what Rocky identified of the projects that we are aware of, which did not yet come to the board, but we have formal letters from Mount Echo, Mount Adams, different communities who have requested projects by letter, not necessarily had an agenda item on our board, but Rocky would in advance be, or proactively be reaching out to those individuals that we know, or those groups that we know were, had vocalized interest in a project.
Okay, so the line of demarcation then is whether one has been presented to the board. Everybody else that has not been presented to the board but has had letters and or requests submitted between last February and today will go through the new process, but specifically Denora is the last one through the gate.
I believe that's what I've heard from the commission.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, the last comment I'll make, and we can move on. But a couple things. Number one, there was not discussion by the board at a board meeting requesting that we come up with a new procedure or bureaucratic process for how to handle these. And Linda, I understand if you had those conversations, it probably was done on a one-on-one with Kara, because the first that I had heard about this was at the meeting where it was presented that here's the program that we're going to put forward. And at that time we said, it seemed like a lot to be putting on the planning department to add additional reviews and all of that. So I continue to go on record as saying, I think this is an extremely time consuming. I think we're adding bureaucracy to a department that is already stretched in the planning department, that is taking time that could be utilized in getting things done. So I'll continue to go on record as saying that, and then also to say that this was not a board-driven program or policy that was presented to us. I'm willing to move on from there.
So, Kara,
Mr. Chair,
yeah, go ahead, Linda.
before we move on from that, I will comment that, and I don't know whether we voted on it or what exactly, but I remember the discussion about how do we handle when people show up at meetings and say, we want to recommend that you do this in this given part. And we sit and we listen, or they come to staff and staff starts to evaluate it. And what we said is, this happens all during the year. So how can we make this more efficient so that we give people a time frame when they can do that and staff can devote the appropriate attention to it? So when they went away and came back with the proposal, I said, fine, whatever works, so that we just don't have these one-offs all the time coming in and people are responding to them, because they do require attention and resources. So how can you manage your work when these things are coming in all the time? So yeah, the process seemed right. I don't want to make it overly bureaucratic, but I also want to make it clear to the community that they can make suggestions to us, that we will evaluate them, but it's not as simple as just walking in the door or calling and saying, oh, I think you should put a new playground in this park or another.
Jim, I do remember, Sue Castellini, I do remember all of this discussion, and it was in a board meeting that we had this discussion and that we agreed that there should be a process. And my question to you, Jim, is how would you simplify it? To me, it isn't all that complicated.
Well, I think there were at least 4 or 5. And again, we haven't discussed the policy itself at a meeting. I must have missed in the minutes of one of our meetings where we had the specific request of staff to come back with a policy, because I will respectfully agree that if you can show that to me, I am more than willing to accept that I just forgot about it. But that said, I do think that just like we said earlier in our discussion today, given the constraints that we've had on COVID, as we are looking forward to implementing new goals and objectives for the year, is this a time, as we said earlier, that we want to be establishing new committees, new processes, or is this a time that we want to say, let's catch up and let's get some things done? That's what I'm feeling about this policy that was presented to us, I think, a couple months ago. It just seems like we are putting a lot of bureaucracy in place, and we are asking the planning department to do a whole lot more of review, analysis, and now reporting that and I remember specifically when this was brought up, I was saying, we cannot get our projects that we have on the plate done, and we keep extending the target date. And now we're spending our time putting a process together for how we can go out and encourage more input from the community for more projects. I just think that it's ill-timed and is not reflective of where we should be putting our energy at this point in time.
President Lindner, I would appreciate the opportunity to reiterate the administrative position. We did not see this as a new policy. We saw this as an administrative process that was designed in order to bring clarity, consistency, and equity to what is a rush and slew of community-driven ideas. As we went through this as a team and developed this administrative process, there was not a moment where we felt that this was adding additional burdens. We felt that this was solving for the inconsistencies in how we approach community-driven ideas. So those are the comments that I will state regarding the question about additional bureaucracy.
And I will just, this will be the last thing, promise. We've talked about this and I said, that's fine. And if you want to go through this process, that's fine. As long as we have upfront an agreement that the projects we have on the table, that we will hold staff accountable for hitting those targets. And if we can hit those targets that we've established for completing these projects while still putting in these new programs, that's fine. Then we will say that it has, to your point, has not added bureaucracy. But if we see consistently slippage of the target completion dates, then that's telling me we have impacted our ability to get things done. So we don't need, I am not saying that we can't put your process in place. Go ahead, but just know that from my perspective, I want to make sure that we will still hit the targets that we had established for projects.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Linda.
Go ahead, Linda.
I don't see this as a way of going out to the community and say, please give us your ideas about what we should be doing in parks. That was not the intent of the request. The intent is if someone comes with an idea, we say, here's the process for submitting that idea for evaluation. So it's not to add more projects necessarily. It is to streamline the work, because right now what happens is that staff does respond to them when they make the request. And now we're saying there is going to be a way of doing that that should add efficiency. So my hope is that it won't be adding things randomly, that we will have evaluated them appropriately.
Well, and I respect all that, and we'll see. That's why I'm just saying, I'm not fighting it. I'm just saying, let's see if it works.
Meanwhile, let's get back to the dog park. Do we have a decision that we need to make now that we've had the community input? What's going on with that poor dog park?
Well, the answer is nothing's gone on. And that's where when we say that we respond to every request that comes in, I hope we do. but I know that those people who presented back last year have not heard follow-up from the parks. So I think what I heard today is that we are saying that these people made a presentation last year to us. We owe it to them to get back to them. And we'll let staff then say, what's the next steps here? We just don't feel it's appropriate that they should go back to the beginning of the line and fill out all the paperwork and start the process all over again. I don't think we have to make any decisions on it. I think it's just a matter of, we committed to them that there would be follow-up, staff committed to them that there would be follow-up, and we're just saying there needs to be follow-up because it hasn't happened.
So we're all good with that, I think. I guess my perspective is, or just to put a finer point to it, my sense, Kara, is previously you guys would get random requests that would kind of land on somebody's desk, be a disruption from their daily activities. They would run off and try and deal with that and then get back to their daily activities. Going forward, what we're looking to do is kind of deal with this in a batch system, that there's a process, you guys get accumulation of these projects, and then you make your assessment in a kind of an organized and consistent fashion, and not let yourselves be disrupted on a daily basis through these random requests. And I like Linda's comment that says, this is not, a request to, hey, give us every idea you can come up with. No, we've got already a lot on our plate to be able to deal with. And to Jim's point, I would like to see more things accomplished. So it's not necessarily a request for additional work on staff's part, but more defining and establishing going forward the rules of engagement. And if you want to do something, this is how you're going to have to do it, and fall in line with that. I would also say that I would be cautious of making the assumption that if we don't hit a particular project deadline, that it is due to this new process. We've had plenty of missed deadlines without this process. I'm assuming we're going to have plenty of missed deadlines going forward. I wouldn't want to necessarily penalize or draw some conclusion that the reason for these deadlines being missed are now this new process. I think everybody is clear that we don't want to bureaucratize the system, that it's all about getting stuff done, being responsive, being fair, and being clear. And I see this as a good opportunity to do that. That being said, I think with the Denora Dog Park, those guys have been waiting around for a while. Let's treat them as our last of the old process, and everybody else that's in line is going to have to be, going through the new approach.
Sure. And President Linder, to address some of your questions, this process does not produce timelines. This process is an annual process that allows for us to evaluate, prioritize plans and proposals to give us, collectively us, both our planning team as well as the commissioners, a tool to determine what is it that should go on to our capital budget for the following year. That is what this process is it is a process of prioritization, and gives us a tool by which to make capital decisions. That's why some of the questions are, do you require funding, or has funding been provided? Obviously, even if a project makes it through the entire process and it's deemed, appropriate for the space, and it's supported by relevant community members, and it has funding, that is something that would certainly rise to a level of let's identify this as a project to complete in the next fiscal year. Even if a project is deemed phenomenal, but there are no resources available, then that becomes a question of, do we want to include that as a park board project? So this process is only to, at the end of that year, there may be 20 projects that make it through this process that we deem are credible projects, but then we have to make decisions about how we are going to expend our capital resources. That is how this process works, so that we can make solid decisions about progressing forward. And to your earlier comment about kind of the chaos of how we would address community requests before, Denora was the example that led to this this desire for a process. When we directly received communication from a group of individuals who wanted to see a dog park put into that community, again, we had no processes in place. Our planning team, our GIS team, our operations team invested hours into working with this group to help them conceptualize, determine how much money it would cost, where it would go, what's the square footage. And so we had a lot of time invested, and it was through that recognition of like, how are we proceeding, that, and then, what occurred is that when we didn't quite know how to approach this, then we put it on the agenda, and because then it became exposed, that's why we had dozens of people, and it hadn't gone through any sort of public vetting process. We had dozens of people who came to that meeting as well. But that was the meeting where we discussed the need for a process. And so it was specifically this project that kind of brought to light that there were no processes in place, and we had dedicated staff resources without an initial vetting of should those staff resources have been allotted. So it, and as you've stated, not every project, this process is to determine which projects are going to be, to rise to the level of deserving of our, or at least the determination of investment of staff time. So just that this project was the catalyst for all of that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the only thing I would add is I view it also as a filter, for you guys to filter out those projects that have value, worth, fall into, our mission objective, and filter out those that don't, so that you are not, spending valuable staff time on something that really has no merit.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would add is that it helps us look at it from our perspective, which we've discussed, but also from the community's perspective, because there would often be questions from them about, well, hey, I've got an idea, and me and some of my neighbors want to do this project. What are the next steps? What's that process look like? What do I have to do? And then they would, now the hope is that they'll be able to see the submission process and understand what's needed of them and what the process will be going forward. So it provides clarity on both ends.
No, good point.
So I love the idea of distilling community input in a way that we can digest it. But I'm hearing a couple of things. One is we're hearing a community wish list through this. And the other I thought we heard earlier, which was soliciting community input on projects. Those are two very different things, and I think we need to be mindful about what we're trying to achieve here. And as far as the community, as long as we're talking about community input, or I'll say back to the wish lists, I love that because it provides us some information as we get to doing what I started this meeting with, which is kind of a 3-year plan. and allows the board to potentially be a lot more proactive with what we're trying to accomplish than what sounds like has been a reactive approach, for instance, with this dog park. So again, I just really get back to, I feel this signifies a real need for us to get into a planning and a how can we do this mode versus how can we respond and react to what all these outside forces are pushing on.
So back to the dog park. Excuse me. Cutting wheat from shaft. Is staff prepared to make a recommendation to us in February regarding this dog park? Having heard the community response and blah, 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 blah.
No, it's an unfunded, we have not, other than look at a square footage and a cost associated. I would not say that we have conducted adequate community engagement. So no, we are not at a point of making a recommendation to the board.
Yeah, I think what we heard from the discussion prior that Commissioner Getz raised was that the next step would be, based on that last meeting, for staff to then go and engage in a community engagement process with the Denora stakeholders on this project.
I'm just saying that's up to you all, but that's what we committed to them to do. The only other thing I'll mention is that, Kara, you said it's an unfunded project. Well, let's be careful, because one thing that we've said is every time a project comes up, we say we don't have money. And I'll just remind you that that is not a filter that I think that is legitimate, given the fact that we see we have money, and we also see how capital dollars become very fluid, because every time we get a report, capital dollars have moved from one project to another. So I would just caution you, as you have personally said, let's not use funding as the reason why we say we can't do something.
Yeah, it certainly is not a pass fail. It is a contributor to kind of an overall scoring system of proceeding. And again, you know, we are talking about projects that are generally not going to be associated with our facility and infrastructure plan. These are you know, enhanced benefits. This is, we as a staff will be very responsive to creating a plan for us to tackle what are the basic infrastructure needs and the development needs within the parks capital budget. And then, you know, this is again to help prioritize these projects so that we can determine if there is an additional $100,000 of our budget that we want to utilize for a project. And maybe there are 15 that make it out of the year's selection. How do we then prioritize those? So no, not having funding is not a pass fail. What I would mean by it is an unfunded project is that all of our dollars right now are associated with the needs that we've collectively identified. You know, utilizing the beginnings of the facilities project, knowing what our needs are. This will then become a tool to be a part of that discussion the next time that we create a capital budget, because we can say, here are these projects, maybe we add on these 3 because they're offering to bring funding with them, and maybe we accept this one into our capital project plan. So it is not a pass fail, but it is a part of the asking that question, is this a community funded idea? Gives us more information to evaluate the project.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Linda, go ahead.
What would be the next step as it relates to the dog park in our desire to be responsive and get information that helps us determine where we go from here? What should we be doing next and when?
I hope that question wasn't directed to me specifically.
I'm asking.
Linda, Commissioner Thomas, I believe that what I've heard collectively from the board is that the expected next step is for us to create and engage the community in a community input process regarding the installation of a dog park at Denor Park.
Okay, and we can communicate that to the appropriate people in the community and get that scheduled and let us know how that's going to happen.
That is one, yes, that is, and that is a function of our planning department, is to conduct public input sessions and structure community engagement processes. So as Rocky stated, we will work with all of our stakeholders in that community, and that community input process is incredibly critical as it determines and guides my recommendation to you regarding a project continuing forward.
Who's going to write them a letter stating where the project stands and what comes next?
I will write that letter.
Be sent a communication. They need to be sent a communication.
I will send that communication.
Fully. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, what would typically occur, like the process that Steve's been working through with the Mount Airy folks right now, is they've had public input sessions. They've had a survey that's gone out to the larger community, and then there's an opportunity for people to provide written feedback as well.
Okay, so have we flogged this horse to death already, and can we move on to any other? I think we were on commissioner's comments, weren't we?
Yeah, if I may, I was just finishing up my what turned out to be very lengthy staff comments. Was the other question Commissioner Getz asked about the recognitions and notifications. I appreciate you all bearing with us during these odd times where we're doing videos instead of ribbon cuttings, etc. But certainly we can make those opportunities available as they arise. And in the case of Stanberry, for example, that's not complete yet. So I'll follow up with an email with some of those details after this meeting. So thank you for that feedback.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, yes, Linda, go ahead.
Yeah, it reminded me, we were on staff comments, because I had a question for you, Rocky, on the MLK Volunteer Day. Was that a new activity? That's not new?
For us, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. We actually had a great plan last year, and we had events planned, but it turned out to be an extremely frigid day. So the events got canceled. As I said, a lot of ours are outdoors.
Yes.
So this was our kind of first year of having success with it. The response was tremendous. We've already been talking internally about how we can do even more next year. And as I know that you're aware, we've made a conscious effort, particularly with our volunteer initiatives, to embrace more of the national days of service, where we have national agencies and local people looking for, hey, I care about this. I want to come out and support. What is available? We have a big one in the fall as well with the Great Outdoor Weekend, and there are others.
Yes.
So that'll continue to be something that we prioritize and further develop.
Great, great. I was really glad to see that, and I think it's a wonderful idea. And also, I think you did a really good job on social media of capturing that and making it known what was happening in parks that day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Be extremely effective for us, and yeah, I mean that's 772 hours of people helping make our parks better that we would not have otherwise received.
Okay, thank you. So commissioner comments, any out there? Anybody wants to share?
I've got a couple. Kara, you had sent us an email talking about discussions you were having on the sale of park property that's currently a park. Can you give us a little bit more information about that? What are you discussing there?
I have engaged in what amounts to about 1 or 2 discussions with a developer. Those discussions, there has been a developer who we have worked with before who has approached the city in regards to purchase of current park board owned property. The land in question is the adjacent to Inwood Park. It is park-owned property. It is currently occupied by the CRC's Hollister Recreation Area. That includes a site that is no longer utilized and a large tennis court complex that is not meeting its kind of service to the community. It is a location that is being utilized for an incredible amount of nefarious activity. So the developer has approached the city in regards to purchasing that property. That developer has been a previous partner in relationship to Inwood Park and is a neighbor of and has been a financial contributor to. So this park adjacent, or this current parkland adjacent to Inwood Park on Vine Street is being presented as a potential for the park space where the tennis courts reside to be sold, and the park space along Vine Street, as well as some additional acquisition of properties or being given properties, could potentially create a linear park space, which would be an incredible service to come off of the corner of that drive and have a linear park that then kind of feeds into Inwood Park. I'm very concerned about how the space is currently being utilized. And again, there are no plans on our part to re-engage in that space. I am a fierce advocate of being very critical, looking at the park space that we own. If park-owned space is not providing a benefit to the community, I think that warrants our serious consideration of whether or not to part with that property for a potential advancement to the community in other ways. But as it's being presented, and again, there have been 1 or 2 conversations, that would be dollars associated with the land sale, dollars given for development of the remaining park area, and potential dollars given on an annual basis for maintenance. I am not certain if I can disclose anything further at this point. It is currently in the hands of DCED, who I imagine will further engage us in conversation.
And so, Kara, that is a park that currently CRC has tennis courts. Have you discussed this with the CRC director yet?
No, I have not. I have not discussed it with our team. I have not discussed it. My intention of including that in the update to you was to begin to put it on your radar. As I said, where I am at this moment is just awareness that a developer has approached the city. And those discussions, I mean, we are 1 or 2 discussions in. So no, I have not yet spoken with CRC in regards to this.
Yeah, I would just recommend that, since that's under the control at the moment of CRC and there are CRC tennis courts there, that CRC be at the table if you are talking about the sale of the property that they are. If you have concerns about the maintenance of the property, you know, that's something that I can take back as your CRC board member. But I think it's an issue that they should be brought into the table to
Yeah,
discuss
I
this.
absolutely agree. I absolutely agree.
Jim, I had a conversation with developers and visited the property, and what they communicated to me is they have had conversations with CRC, and this is something you need to follow up on, but that CRC has no interest in pursuing this or maintaining this property. So, that's from their words or their mouth. You need to make sure that that's the sense that truly CRC does not want to, continue to invest in this property. But in my visit there, it is dubbed Zombieville, and that was my first experience of seeing zombies walking around the park area, and truly, I think keeping the park the way it is would be a disservice to the community. But
yeah, a couple of things, Brad. Number one, I think if we are doing a disservice to the community of maintaining a park space, I would recommend that we have, and I will have this discussion with CRC because this is the first that I've heard that CRC has been engaged on this. But number one, I have a real problem if we have existing park property that is adjacent to one of our significant parks, being Inwood. And I know exactly the park you're talking about because I live here and I know exactly what you're talking about. But before we just up and decide to sell it to a developer, whether that developer has made contributions to the park before, I think we really need to talk strategically about what is our role in preserving parks. It also concerns me a little bit given I want to be careful here, given the scenario that we've seen developers approaching city council people, that we've got developers approaching commissioners about a potential sale of property. I think maybe that's something we need to talk about the process as well for how commissioners should be engaging with developers, just to be clear and transparent. And I just think this is something that needs public input as well about the potential. We just went through a very, 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 very difficult time in Burnett Woods, where the park board was accused of selling property to a developer in Burnett Woods, to the point that commissioners were accused of taking money from the developers for some reason. To think that we are now looking at a huge piece of property adjacent to one of our key parks, that we are talking with the developer about selling that, I think we really need to be talking about that. But that's just my 2 cents.
No, I think your identifications are correct, Commissioner Getz. I would like to reiterate that I've had one conversation with the developer, one conversation with DCED, which is why I just wanted to put it on your radar so that we can start to begin these discussions.
Thank you. The second comment or question I had was related to the boat dock. At our last public meeting, we had given you the authority to move forward with contracting for the boat dock that we unanimously approved. I understand that some changes have taken place. Can you fill us in publicly about what is the status of the boat park?
Sure. The following the last meeting, or at the last meeting, we reported that due to various concerns that the project had been taken then to a public, the intention is to take it through an RFP process in order to allow for a public bid. That occurred just prior to, I think at our December meeting, that was just prior to the holiday times. And then immediately upon our return, our team met with the city's legal representation. And I know that process, that expected timeline was communicated in the director's update. But Mr. Shuckman, would you like to comment on the who from our team has been engaged in what processes and what is next?
Yeah, sure. We, as Kara just referenced, we had a conversation with law, purchasing, and the department head for the Department of Economic Inclusion. And the conclusion was to put this out as a two-step process, starting with a request for qualifications, then shortlisting from there to then do a request for proposals. We are preparing that RFQ. It is waiting for the city manager's approval to approve us moving forward. So then at that point, we would put out the request for qualifications. And what we're doing is putting it together so that people can respond with teams. And those teams would be responding to the design and construction installation of the dock, but also its operation.
So this will all then at some point come back to the park board?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Because
yeah, what happens is there's a selection committee, so we're getting approval also from the manager for the members of the selection committee of staff from parks and from other departments. We would go through, as I said, that process, put together a short list, and then would, when a final proposal is ready to move forward and has been recommended and approved by the manager, we present that proposal for the board's consideration to either approve it, make changes to it, or whatever the outcome will be.
And what is the RFQ reflecting as far as location of the boat dock, since I understand that's the big question?
Actually, the RFQ is a little bit open-ended there. So we're putting together some minimum standards that we want to achieve, such as a minimum number of private boats that can dock, but also commercial boats. As far as the location, we're going to be asking the teams to come back with a proposal that would be somewhere between the public landing and along up to the Roebling Bridge. So that may still be an opportunity to put it at the public landing and still allow for large commercial boats like the Mississippi Queen, or if the Delta Queen was ever to be back in service, to dock at the public landing and still have the boat dock. CRC's transient boat harbor years ago used to be closer to the Roebling Bridge. So if that's a possibility, we're open to hearing that from whatever the teams propose to us.
So I know at our last meeting, I know Commissioner Castellini point blank asked, as it shows in the minutes, that she asked if staff approved of the proposed location of the marina. And we didn't get quite the answer, but we're now saying that the location is the issue, and we're looking at moving it so that it will allow for the large ships, such as if we have tall stacks again?
Yeah, we're open to that, but really the way we're crafting the RFQ is to be a little more open to more creative solutions, so that if people want to come and look at other locations, they want to include a restaurant or a bar or cafe, the things the grant wouldn't have allowed, we are certainly open to that. So we're going to be looking at what are the most advantageous proposals that come to us. But again, the first step is let's see what teams can be assembled who will respond to the RFQ, who have the expertise to put this together.
And is it the park board's position that we do want to ensure that we have the capability of doing events such as tall stacks and allowing for the docking or the ability of the large commercial ships to be able to come in and be there at the landing, at the public landing?
Yeah, that's exactly the idea, not to preclude any of those things from happening.
And we knew about that before. We knew that that was an issue when we received the bid that we had accepted last meeting, but evidently that was not a concern at that point in time.
I don't know that we fully vetted all the aspects of that. the original proposal that was brought forward to the board to really look at what the needs were for future tall stacks or for major commercial riverboats to be docking there. And that would have had to happen at some point anyway.
Yeah, and that's where I know that we paid for a KZF study to be done. I think we paid, if I'm not mistaken, 75,000, or we paid significant amount of money for KZF to look at this. And in the KZF report, it brought up this issue that we ought to take into consideration the location of that dock because of the potential for impeding future events. But evidently we must have missed that or something when staff asked us to approve the last contract that we approved at our last meeting. So I would just caution us in the future to if we are commissioning reports and paying consultants to do work for us, that we take a look then at their product and make sure that we've addressed the issues before getting approval for projects. The only other thing that I have is I just wanted to report that at the request of Tom Jones, who's paid for our Tom Jones Commons, he requested that I go and visit where they produce some solar lighting trees that he's been asking for with the park department to take a look at. He arranged that the contractor that develops these is in Amelia, of all places. So he had requested that I go and take a look at these, and I met with Spotlight Solar, which is a company that produces solar lighting. And I have to tell you, I'm so excited about the opportunity that we would have. Talk about something visionary for Cincinnati parks. When you think about the number of trails that we have, the bike trails that we're doing, the playgrounds that we're putting in that require lighting, they do solar lighting that really is a piece of art, along with providing the utilitarian lighting that we need. And it's solar. And it's done by a company that is producing these right here in Amelia. And when I stepped back and I saw what they are doing, and also knowing that from a city of Cincinnati standpoint, solar energy and becoming solar independent is something that the city has really embraced, to a point where we're doing a huge solar farm out near Lunken Airport. I just think as we go forward, and I'll continue to help lead in this project if we need to, but I think the Cincinnati Park Board could really make a statement that we are going to embrace solar, and that we would look into, as we're doing all of these projects, or as our infrastructure study shows the need for replacement of lighting that we have in our parks. If we would embrace the concept of doing so with solar power, I think it would be a great thing for parks to do in conjunction with a city initiative. So as I said, I'll circulate a brief visit report from my time in seeing this, but I tell you, I walked away, and I will also bring it up with my CRC colleagues, that what an opportunity we have to really make a statement and strategically make a vision for Cincinnati parks of being solar conscious. So you'll see that coming from me in the near future. But with that, that's all I've got to say.
Jim, did you take some pictures?
You know, I do have pictures, and I have a presentation that they gave to me that is so exciting, because these things, like I said, are a piece of art, and as well as being utilitarian, providing light, and also being solar driven. It's beautiful. And it's something that Tom Jones has been talking with park staff about for a long time, and it's just so exciting. So I'll forward that information to everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from commissioners? Okay, hearing none, we are going to move on to executive session. So just to reiterate that when we return from executive session, basically it's just going to be to adjourn the meeting. So, you know, really no sense for those 12 viewers to hang on unless they want to see us say goodbye to each other. So I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code section 121.22 parenthesis G to consider the employment, compensation, and discipline of public employees. So we need to have a roll call vote to move into this. Mary?
Could I please have a second on the motion?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I told you I'd screw up before the meeting was over. That's probably 3 or 4 of them already. So, second? All right. Thank you.
Sorry, who was that?
Molly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, President Linder?
Yes.
Vice President Getz?
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner North?
Yes.
Motion passes.